under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. If you have a hard time hearing me, please just raise your hand and I'll speak up. Especially anybody joining us on Zoom too, if you could let me know that, that'd be great. Thank you.
You want to just quickly go through what it's different tonight in terms of the Zoom?
Yeah, well, we decided as a school committee and the superintendent that in order for everybody to feel safe and be able to attend one way or the other, that we will wear masks during our meeting and allow people to come in on Zoom. That way everybody who would like to participate can at this time. If you need to speak and remove your mask tonight, it's easier. I will call the roll. Janet Dykett.
Present.
Timothy West.
Present.
Emily Brew. Kelly Hooper. Present. Joan Petrosky.
Here.
And I'm here as well. Any adjustments to the agenda?
Yes, one adjustment, one tweak. We need to add Kimberly Camshad to the appointments of the middle school COVID Ed Tech 2. And the other change is Alicia Brand, who's already under appointments, is listed as an Ed Tech 2, should be an Ed Tech 1.
And Kimberly Camshad is an
Ed Tech 2 at the middle school.
Okay.
COVID Ed Tech 2.
That's great. All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Winthrop School Committee meeting of September 15th, 2021 as written or with corrections.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Recording in progress.
Hold on. All right, try that.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Vote passes unanimously.
Okay, who made the motion? Who seconded?
Janet.
Jana and Kelly. Okay, superintendent report.
So I passed up on a report, a number of things to add, and it sparked some conversation, which might be appropriate now or later in the agenda. But first of all, I want to tell you that we do have a second student. Emily will not have to be doing double duty for this to be her last meeting. Her name is Caroline Squires, and she is going to be joining us as a new student representative from high school. And actually, I didn't write this down. What year is Caroline?
She's here.
She's a senior. Okay. So we're hoping, our plan is for myself and Emily to meet and Sue to meet with some number between now and the next meeting, just to give her an orientation and get her up to speed with this process. Trying to read my own notes here. Joel Stoneton and I have met to discuss the possible revolving renovation fund application. We have until the end of the month to complete it. You may recall when he presented here, he had a laundry list of projects that need to be done. We're not going to be able to get those into the budget, and get that done in a reasonable amount of time. So I think we should consider a revolving renovation fund. The problem is that we have to be in by the 29th of October. So I need to get that information to you guys ASAP, and so you have a chance to look at it before our next meeting. But he sent me a list today of projects, but tops on my list are some safety things, and the biggest one, of course, being the sprinkler system here in the grade school. It's somewhat antiquated, needs to be taken care of. There's a boiler issue that needs to be addressed here at the grade school. I can look up the list, but it's a pretty lengthy. No, it's not a lengthy list, but it's going to require some money. He had put it in there, repaving the parking lot here at the grade school. Water, I can't think what you call it, water system type thing at the middle school, doing projects at all 3 schools. The problem is that the revolving renovation fund is limited, so it isn't like you can, put in a multi-million-dollar application and expect it to be funded. So we may have to prioritize that, and you guys may have to decide. But we're going to need to vote on it you need to vote obviously on it, and that needs to be before next meeting. Kelly, you have your hand raised.
I do. Is that for the DOE?
Yes. Yes. By the way, related to that, but it wasn't specifically put in my report, Joel is looking at some other grant type things and looking at different avenues to address some of our capital improvement needs. So all of you, particularly those of you who were on the committee before, know we did that study a year and a half ago, and and this is one of the things that was suggested, that we look at some revolving renovation funds, but the real question was, does it make sense to spend a lot of money on the grade school if that doesn't really appear to be a long-term answer, that we're looking at possibly replacing that? But I want to let you know that in that same letter from the Department of Education, the construction pieces, they've identified the 3 schools that are being funded this year under the capital improvement projects for new buildings. 3 elementary schools, and the total of the projects is somewhere in the neighborhood of $126 million. That's not, none of that stuff is really terribly shocking, at least not in my mind. But what is shocking is that those are the 3 that were funded this year. There are 74 other projects on the list. 74. So, as I said to you earlier, and I've said multiple times, they're not even accepting new applications for construction projects. So, it would be a pipe dream for you or anybody in this fine community to think that we're looking at a new grade school anytime in the next 20 years. It's not going to happen. So, that means, if that's the case, then that does mean we need to make the investments to make sure our grade school, in particular, is safe and viable. I think structurally, this school could last another 50+ years easily. And it's a good building, but it is quite old. And it's not exactly, it wasn't built for a grade school. And I think these guys have done an amazing job of using the space as well as they have. So, but I think if anybody thinks that something is going to happen, the only thing that could happen, and I say this jokingly, of course, is that we could win. One of us could win Powerball, and I would say that if we win Powerball when it's over $600 million like it is now, I would gladly donate $50 million to Winthrop and pay for a new grade school. Because that's what it's going to cost. I mean, be realistic, guys. It's going to be a $40 to $50 million project. So.
Could I just interject one thing? For a number of years, I sat on as a school board representative on the Community Safety Committee. And it continually came back to identifying that this school, from the standpoint of can we keep our people safe from outside forces or even internal forces, the answer was we're probably pretty low on that 0 to 10 list. Okay, we're certainly not a 10, but we're closer to a 0. And there are a lot of examples that were given, such as the location, the ability to drive vehicles through it. We have, even though we reinforced walls and everything else, you can still drive things through it. Too many doors, not enough safety ways of keeping those doors shut. I mean, my point is that we still have to think about long-term. Yes, maybe the building shell will stand up, but are we doing the best we can to keep the staff and the pupils all safe while we're here? And hopefully we don't have some of the problems that they have in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I think there's, I don't want to go too far down this discussion, but I think any of us who've been through, we use email. Is that for me? That sounds my mic, so I don't know what else is For those of us who've been through Alice training, the presenters will always start the presentation by saying, this is not a question of if, it's a question of when. So, and I have a meeting set up with Officer Delaney, who's working from the Winthrop PD to, we have a number of new staffers here. We need to do initial Alice training, we need to do ongoing Alice training. So it is on our list of things that have to be done. So moving on, things that were not in my report, the auditors are here now. They probably will be here tomorrow and maybe Friday. Hard to say how things are going. They have a lot of questions, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And there's no timeline yet for a hard and fast report for you guys. I just put this in here, I think it's interesting. I don't know what will become of this, but Channel 13 did reach out to one of our part-time community members, who is a Rotarian friend of mine. And she reached out to Channel 13, or Channel 13 reached out to her, and they want to do a spotlight on our nurses. And so they asked, well, one of them asked me today if I thought we should do that, and I said, depends on how comfortable they are. I generally don't ask our people who are probably under the most pressure of anybody right now to kind of put themselves out there, but Jeannie seemed somewhat interested, and so I responded and said, if you're comfortable doing it, they wanted not just her, they wanted to do her and possibly Nurse Melissa and the nurse from RSU 38 as a spotlight. Don't know that it's going to happen, obviously. I will keep you informed if they do move forward with that. So let me look real quick. We have appointments. Alicia Brand, as I mentioned earlier, she should be a grade school COVID Ed Tech 1. And Nicole Shaw, middle school Ed Tech 3, library media specialist. And the one I re-added today, Kim Campshad. I met with her today. Very nice lady. With over 30 years of experience in I think 34 years of experience in education. So she's excited about being in middle school COVID Ed Tech 2. And I asked her just to make sure she, was signing up for the job that she was, we need her to do. And I asked her what she thought she'd be doing as a COVID Ed Tech 2, and she basically went through the whole list of soups and nuts, from substituting in the classroom to wiping down toilet seats, if that's what needs to be done. So she got it, and she seemed to be fine with everything. The only thing she wasn't comfortable with was what she called personal care, decorating and stuff like that. Said, well, we don't really have our ed techs doing, or our COVID ed techs doing that type of thing. So, but it was good. She was very entertaining. So unless you have questions, that's all I have.
Any questions? Joe?
I just wanted to bring up something that maybe is more appropriate for Joel in thinking about the revolving loan fund and things and everything. Although we don't recognize it too much around here, we did for a number of months experience a very warm season, season of dryness. Some people might have said that we're actually in parts of the state which we were in a drought. And it does appear that there is some need to think about the question of, if we want to keep our schools open, and if the climate continues to warm up and bring all the problems that can be brought with it, what are we doing about having backups if, for instance, the water system fails on us? It could be any system, okay? It's the idea of, what are we doing to keep the school going? And we've made preparations to do. And I know that some parts of the country, they've thought about building their own new reservoirs, for instance. But I also know that in North Dakota that they're selling their cattle like crazy, and it's incredibly dry, and part of it's because no snow is coming in there. I mean, we're in this time. So I think you could use some of those examples of what we might be wanting to do with this money, just to get ready so that we continue to
Well, we also realize we're not going to get enough money to do all the projects we want to. We're going to need to prioritize. I did call up while you were sharing that, Joe, the list that Joel had sent over. So let me just quickly share it with you. The grade school, this is not a complete list. I just asked you to the top 2 or 3 in each building. His number one thing was to tar the parking lot, retar, and do the drainage down there. Pretty bad. The north wing boiler, as I mentioned, and the check valve for north wing heating system. So he sent me this, and when I got it, I said, top priority for me would be our sprinkler system. You may or may not recall that when I came on board, there were some major issues with the sprinkler system, and we couldn't get we were in danger of having the school shut down by the company because they wouldn't pass us an inspection. I had to get Chief Brooks involved. I think that's, to me, it fits a little tiny bit into what you're saying, that it's a priority just in terms of if we want to run the building, we have to meet those codes. And again, I don't mean to stray too far off task on this subject, but remember that the school that burned in Northern Maine burned down. I don't know how they were occupying it, but it had no working sprinkler system. I don't know how you're allowed to run a school if that's the case, but that was it. So that was at the grade school. The middle school, the light bulb system, complete water system. He said the water system up there is really bad. Also some tarring the parking lot. At the high school, the pump motor for the boiler and lining, the sediment in the heating pipes, and rear doors of building. So obviously, with our high school being, we just put a pretty sizable chunk of change in there. That list is not terribly expensive, but I would say, and this is not free money. This is a low interest loan. We would have to, once we're approved, it's a very, like I said, low interest loan. So it's going to have to be part of our budget for, depending on the amount, whether we go 10 years, 20 years, something like that. I did copy the process, but basically it's, it sort of outlines it.
When you say low interest, are you saying 1%?
Yeah, 1 or less, yeah. That's what I was looking for, obviously.
And we borrow over the years that I've been on this committee, occasionally we borrow 100,000, a couple $100,000.
Yep.
To take care of some of these problems, because you just can't leave them unattended.
Well, the problem, as you all know, is that we have, it's great to have Joel in this position, because we do not have someone who has been looking at the building at a comprehensive level. When Joel came in and sort of gave his overview of what he sort of picked up on, it was astonishing. So we have neglected our buildings for a lot of years, and it's another thing I said to you guys before, that if I were the state and I was looking at Winthrop, and one of the criteria is they say you don't let your buildings fall down around you and then expect us to bail you out. They expect you to meet maintenance of effort. They expect you to be making repairs. They expect you to keep the buildings up, and you have to prove that. And I would say if the application is open right now, our application would fail badly, because we have not met our burden of putting money into our buildings, keeping them up, and I think we're fortunate that we have decent structural buildings, but there are all of these infrastructure pieces that we have not paid attention to, and we're not alone. And it's very easy for schools to just say, well, we'll put it off the roof for another year. We'll do this and eventually you don't do it, and we end up in this place. So it'll be on our comprehensive plan.
Can you just repeat what the first thing was in the middle school? I thought water system and parking lot, but I think you said one other thing I didn't.
Yeah, in middle school, it's called the light call system, which I don't honestly know what that is. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I know at one point we talked about the heat pumps that were in front of the town office and the grade school.
Yep.
Do we know, because those needed to be replaced, or they weren't working, or?
The best way to know, my understanding from my conversation with Joel, the town is actually paying for them, I don't mean to point over our direction.
Okay, I know that you were gonna talk, and I
Yeah.
just didn't know if we knew anything, because if not that.
I will actually have more information about that at our next meeting,
Okay.
because Jeff and I have not started our series of meetings. We have a number of things to talk about, actually, and we meet next Tuesday.
Okay, awesome.
So, can I just pick up on what Gianna said, because I wrote this down. I think one of the things that Joel should bring to us is a little bit of a discussion between why do we keep investing in our furnace system? Why aren't we getting heat pumps? Because heat pumps do two things, they heat and they cool, okay? And we really do need to address the cooling issue
Yeah.
if we want to keep our schools open.
Especially upstairs.
And no offense to the furnace and everything, but I know we spend a lot of money on upkeep. We've got good people working for us and getting it done. But we could be doing our part for the warming aspect too, by getting rid of the fossil fuel that we're burning.
And how much money would that save?
I don't know, but I think over time, it makes some sense.
Especially in classrooms.
And you could do it piecemeal too, you know, you could start and do it. But again, to me, that's part of the whole idea of keeping the school open.
Okay, and I just want to remind you that we have put Joel into basically a 50% position, and he has a 50% something else job too, so.
I don't have to come here and defend himself.
Other questions?
No, I don't have to.
Anything else, or is that?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say welcome to Alicia, Nicole, and Kimberly, and thank you very much, and it's going to be, I'm sure, very good news for the schools to have that COVID tech there. All right, for my chair report, I just wanted to remind you, I'm sure you saw it in your packet, that there's the annual conference flyer and registration form. It's going to be virtual this year. I don't know if anybody's interested in attending. I think, at least last year, they recorded a bunch of them, so even if you couldn't attend, you could watch it after. But if you are interested in going and want to register, if you could let me know by Tuesday, because the registration is due before October 18th. I just don't want to wait till the last minute. And if anybody does attend and they would like to report at our next meeting about a particular conference that they attended, they are welcome to do so, but I'm not going to require it. Okay, committee reports, finance.
Kelly and I did a bunch of warrants. I will forward these to you, Jim.
Thank you.
We did general warrants 1, 26C, 5, and 6. We also did 7, 8, and 9. School nutrition 3, payroll 4B, 5, 6, 6A, and 7. And we also were told that we no longer need to do a separate warrant for school nutrition. So those will be in our general warrants because they're already coded differently. So that came from Bernice to Ida to us. So we won't be reporting up. We did our the last school nutritional was 3, and we will, the rest will now be in general warrants.
Excellent. For policy, we met on October 15th, I think it was. Yeah, I'm sorry, September 15th. And we are putting forth today 3 policies for first reading that we'll talk about under new business. Negotiation?
Nothing right now.
Nothing? And no curriculum? She does. Oh, is Megan here?
She's on, yeah.
All right, hi Meg.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry I'm attending virtually today, but I do have some great news about curriculum work. I'm very excited with this Friday a workshop that we're doing district-wide. We're going to be starting some initial curriculum work at the middle school level across all content areas, so very excited to have pilot support as we move forward on that. Also on Friday, the high school teachers will spend the morning working in their content area PLCs to continue the work we had started in September. The grade school on Friday, the pre-K folks are going to be looking at the updated curriculum guidelines that were put out by the state, but their staff is going to focus on additional trainings to help support some of their ongoing programs already. So they'll be looking at doing some teacher college trainings, their RTI response to intervention, they'll do their annual training for that. And then they're going to look a little bit closer at running records and how to analyze those. All three schools also will be doing their Leah Proctor training. And although that's not related to curriculum, it's a nice little plug that the state has continued their contract this year with NWEA. And that will be our math and English MEA. So we actually have to do some official proctor training for that. And I'm pretty excited because there's also additional opportunities from the state for professional development. So we're going to be able to really make that data we collect this fall actionable. And that will guide some of our curriculum work, but also some of our professional development this year.
Excellent, thank you. There are no administrative reports, so we can move on to old business to revisit the return to school protocol.
Okay, this is become a ever broad conversation. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is we have met, the administrative team met, and we discussed, there was a suggestion from a community member to consider allowing us to have vaccinated volunteers back in the schools, primarily grade school, where they had a huge number of volunteers prior to COVID, and so they suggested, or asked about the possibility of returning to that, so that basically a lot of them were very helpful with a number of different things in the school, including breakfast for the younger kids, and reading, to children, working with children, and so a lot of assistance, and as you know, the grade school has done an amazing job of trying to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to multitask myself, keep piecing it together. Jolene has done an amazing job, the staff has done an amazing job of Nurse Melissa over there has done an amazing job, and Sue, I shouldn't do that because I'll never name everybody. But just have been incredibly short-handed from day one, piecing it together every day, and getting things done. So we're hoping that by getting allowing the vaccinated volunteers to work in the buildings, that we can provide some relief to our staff and provide some coverages, and there's so many other things that need to occur, like planning for students who are in quarantine. And that's still an ongoing issue for us. It's going to continue to be for a while. Hopefully, things are plateauing, but we had, and it's not today, it wasn't yesterday, but it was reported 10 new deaths today. But they're not today. It's, they're still backlogged. So, but in the very recent few days, it's 10. That's a lot. And so our numbers are still very alarming. So we're just trying to do the best we can to provide a safe environment for our staff and students, and keep the kiddos in school, and do that type of stuff. So that's happened. I think we probably need to have a conversation about President Biden's proposal that all employees be vaccinated or tested weekly. I think we should talk about that and how people feel about that. I know it's, right now it's not a mandate because it's OSHA's reviewing all of the sort of pros and cons to that, or I shouldn't say pros and cons, but the safety or issues that they need to look at, and before it becomes a mandate or not a mandate. Pool testing is starting next week. We have actually done quite well, very recently of getting some volunteers, I think. Jolene, you have 4 people?
Melissa's been working really hard at that. We have 3 people, but I'll let Melissa speak to that because Melissa has been reaching out to our moms, who 2 are RNs and one's a medical assistant. But go ahead, Melissa, because you've been doing the work to get those people in here.
I think they feel bad, when I reach out to them. So 3rd grade moms, Vanessa Parlin and Libby Mortimer. She also has a daughter in 6th grade, I think of the grade, middle school. They're both nurses in different fields of maternity in Portland and CMMC in the cardiac and ER. They conveniently have every Tuesday off, and that's kind of the day we decided just for planning purposes of a positive, right? So it'll be a Thursday or a Friday, so we can catch those. So they willingly said they would, and they were volunteers in the past anyway, and they wanted to help. So they were like, how do we sign up? So Libby has already come in. She plans on coming in Friday, and we're gonna watch a video on the Concerta. But we also have a room set up that Jolene is setting up and helping. We're gonna help get all the room set up for our equipment. And then Vanessa will come on Tuesday. She's like, I'll wing it. It's all good. You'll be there. We'll get it done. And then Josie Parkin is a mom of a 2nd grader. I've known her since preschool because she's been in the same class as my son. She's a medical assistant in an office, and she has volunteered as well. And she wanted to come and help. However, not even just pool testing or nursing, but she actually has covered in the health office for me since I've been out with my quarantine son, and my daughter ended up getting COVID. So it's been juggling my personal stuff, but also trying to help out the school as well. So she's helping, willing to volunteer. She'll help out Jolene if she needs it, wherever she plans. She's coming in tomorrow as well, just to help us out. So I'm thrilled.
Yep, we have people at the middle school and high school as well. The sort of strange dilemma that we've come up with is some of these people want to volunteer, and we advertise for them, and we are looking for between 3 and 5 hours a week to assist with this, and we've allocated a chunk of money from our COVID from the ARP. But there are some people, and talk to the association tonight, I know exactly what show to do. That we have people who don't want to be paid, and then we have people who will want to be paid. So we'll worry about that. That's not anything we need to worry about. But it's good. We have a good number of people who are volunteering at the middle school, high school. You're also at the grade school, and I'm sure you said that sort of winging it, and we're all going to be winging it. The state is still winging it in terms of doing this and whatever. The real test is going to be in terms of time and man hours is when we start having positive pools, which undoubtedly with the way things are going right now, that's going to happen. So there's not much. Melissa, what are the size of the pools in the grade schools?
So I have started, I'm going to finalize it on Friday, but I've been trying to do 12 or 15, just because in my thought process is when one comes back positive, we have 25, I'm going to have to solve all 25 of those, or with someone, on Thursday and Friday. So 3rd grade is the largest class, and they've already been quarantined. So 3rd graders tend to have signed up the most, so I have 2 pools for them, but roughly about 10, and there are quite a few staff members that signed up as well. So I'm kind of putting them in different pools just so that it's all spread out as evenly, and then Jolene and I will finalize it on Friday before we start Tuesday.
Roughly overall, what percentage of the grade school do you think is participating?
I know that's always a question. I can get back to you because I have that here. I can look at it. I can't remember exactly because I have to look at. So So I've had to delete some, because like, my daughter has COVID, so she'll be exempt for 90 days, that's just an example. And there's been a couple others that have signed up that they've had COVID, so I have to just delete them off. So there is, there's always a work in progress, which, is something that I'm gonna keep an eye on and keep it as confidential as possible, right? And not share it with the volunteers or anything like that. I would just cross them before I print off my list every Tuesday. I'll just delete them fully. So I can't remember, but I will get back to you.
Do you feel like it's a pretty good
Yeah, I feel like it will start growing as people realize, the advantage of it, being able to keep coming to school.
Yeah.
So I think 80 or 90, I want to say, and I think that's comparable to middle school and high school. I can't remember what Jeannie said the other day. I think we had roughly about comparable and the same.
Okay. Great.
Well, what the high school and the middle school have, an advantage for them is, I think there are people who are vaccinated who are not choosing to pool test because, we're trying to cover all possibilities. So, the distancing, the masking, the vaccination for those that's available, pool testing, all those things are presently in place. And, so I think I certainly can see, and I've heard people say, well, we're vaccinated, or I just had a conversation with somebody yesterday about they have tested positive for the antibodies, so they're not. Like, well, I don't know. I didn't think about that a little bit more, but it's whatever. I think it's, if nothing else, it's causing a great deal of conversation.
Yeah.
So, I think we're covering all our bases in terms of trying to do that, which probably brings us back to need for us to have some conversation about President Biden's suggestion at this point, and whether it becomes a mandate or not, we'll wait to see, hopefully in a short period of time. I can tell you, for those, if you're not aware, and I probably should just say this for the record, basically he is suggesting that all people should be vaccinated, and if they choose not to be vaccinated, that they should be tested weekly. There are some, I go on the Kennebec Valley Superintendent's Zoom every Thursday. I'll be on it tomorrow. I'm aware, actually I'm not aware, I didn't hear this from the Kennebec Valley Superintendents. The commissioner had a Zoom last Monday, and she made us aware that there are already schools in the state that are doing that, regardless of the fact that it's not a mandate, they just think it's what they want to do. And I wanted to bring it to you guys to find out kind of where you stand with what, if anything, you want to do. I mean, so obviously the options are we do nothing, at least at this point, or we wait for to see what the result of the OSHA findings are. Becomes a mandate, becomes what we do. We don't get to, we don't need to say it, but I think we should at least be prepping for the possibility. I can tell you that the nurses and the administrators met last week, Melissa, to talk about what this might look like. And I'll tell you, there was some discussion that we shouldn't, if we go in this direction, whether it's through a mandate or through our own personal our decision as a school committee, that there was certainly a point of view that if we have to test people, or people have to test on a weekly basis, they should do that on their own. I'm not of that opinion. My opinion is that we should, if we say, I know that's another thing that falls to Melissa and to Jeannie, but it's, I want to keep it, and I think you guys know well enough, I'm not a control freak, but this is something that, if this is a mandate, then I want to be able to control it, for lack of a better term. I want to make sure that our people are being tested by our people, and we're keeping track of that, our record ourselves. I need to sort of jump out of this conversation just very briefly, because I forgot to tell you that I did talk to Jeannie, and we had some conversations, and so we did just today advertise for a part-time, 2 or 3 day a week nurse position, additional staff. I don't know that it will net out to be more than 0.2, 1 day a week, because what Jeannie's saying is she wants to kind of week go down to 3 or 4 days a week. So it'll be a net gain in terms of an additional staff. But we don't really know right now, so just something for you to be aware of. So back to the conversation. Just curious what people say.
Unless it's, mandated, I would definitely not support testing teachers. Unless it's like state law. I just think it's not a good way to go.
Not a good one.
Not a good way to go. There's a lot of staff here, I know staff in my district that would not be happy with that at all. Obviously we have to comply, but, it's just.
Kelly?
Just food for thought, the writing is very clearly on the wall that OSHA will come back to support this, very clearly.
That's what I think it's gonna happen anyway, I don't think 3 weeks beforehand is.
Well, my thought is, it should probably be started beforehand, so that people can get their grumbles out before it becomes a mandate, because at that point, they don't have a choice. If we start it sooner, they can decide how important it is to them. We, with DHS, we work with a partner agency that recently mandated that all of their employees be vaccinated. No testing option, and there was a significant turnover. If there are staff members who are going to be rather upset with this, whether it's mandated or voluntary, that's on our part, I think it's probably a good idea to know that sooner than later. So that we can find replacements for them who are aware of what that mandate is and are willing to maintain employment with us with that mandate.
So I should interject again, I'm sorry, write these things down, but I skip over them sometimes. Just looking at my notes, I thought we'd already made this decision, but apparently it wasn't clear. But we have, not in addition to the vaccinated volunteers, we also have mandated that our substitutes are all vaccinated. So, okay.
I have a question. So you're saying that these employees would have to do individual testing, they couldn't just be part of the pool testing? And if that is so, why?
Don't know that.
I think they could be part of the pool testing.
I mentioned that when we had our meeting too.
They could be, I didn't.
Yeah. So we have 25 staff members at the grade school signed up for pool testing, 25. And I can't, obviously I'm not going to give you numbers on those that I know vaccinated or not, but it's not many unvaccinated signed up for pool testing. Most of them are, the majority are vaccinated. And there's about 75 kids.
So couldn't the first step be that we can say to the staff, the handwriting looks like it's going to be on the wall, we don't have a choice. Would you be willing to voluntarily be in a pool?
The DHS commissioner told us in as many words as she can that it's a matter of when, not if, OSHA comes back to schools.
So that, and
Wouldn't that be a good
I
first
I
step?
just, it's such an emotional thing, and I think people get so stuck on if it comes from us or it comes from
So
the
that's why I'm thinking if
people are
we
getting
could
angry, and there's no
ask-
teachers here, that if it came from us, it's gonna be,
Right.
if it comes from the state, it's gonna be different.
But if we ask people, like, hey, this is what we were thinking might be coming and that will be taken out of our hands, would you be willing to volunteer to be in a pool? I don't know, to me that would be a
I
nice,
think making a decision here to force people to start testing.
no, I'm not saying to force
For
it.
the job, I think that's,
I'm saying we should ask them if they'd be willing to do it
yeah.
on a volunteer basis.
wish you did, I'm not even sure who to ask, but Melissa, do you have any idea, no reason I would expect you to know this, but I'm gonna ask you anyway.
Oh, great.
Any idea when OSHA will report out?
To let us know. I know. And I missed the nurse meeting today that I usually, this is what I do at like 9 o'clock. I'll watch the update and see if that was said in our meeting today, because that's usually where we find out our information. If I hear about it, I'll let you guys know though, as soon as I know.
That would be good. I guess I thought this kind of came out, 3 weeks ago? I was hoping that it would be within a wheels of, that was growing very slowly.
My other thought is what if there are people who, for whatever reason, cannot take the vaccine? What category do they fall into? Because they might have an allergy to a component or some other medical issue.
I think we have to be sensitive to medical. You know, I know people that are not anti-vaxxers, but they have tried and had a reaction to it. I think we always have to think about considerations. The tough one, and the thing that could potentially get us in more trouble, is people who have religious objections. And I'm sorry, when I think about why we ask people to vaccinate, or why we suggest that that's the best possible thing right now, I don't know, I personally, this is just speaking for me, I can get by, people can have a medical exemption. I understand that. I think we figure out how to make that work. But that would be as far as that.
But those who might have a religious objection to being vaccinated, if we're offering and saying, we understand that, would you be willing to be part of a pool test? That's a legitimate thing, right?
I agree. I think there's a difference between mandating that all employees must be vaccinated and saying, hey, you've got two choices. Either vaccinate or test.
And we'd rather have you do it voluntarily than get to the point where it's mandated.
That's exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, I hear what you're saying. I think it's either you are vaccinated or you test. You know, for whatever reason, I don't even know if we need to know why they're not vaccinated. But
No,
then, and I sort of get the pool testing, but if you, I mean, why are you throwing 15 other people in there with that one person?
No, I had just, I don't know, maybe you can't know this, but if you had some, say, teachers from the grade school who are unvaccinated, could you have a pool of just those people? I'm asked that.
I would assume.
That is
For quarantining if they're in the same pool. Right?
How?
Sorry, but I missed that part.
we're not supposed to identify them. If you put them all in the same pool,
It's clear.
it is and it's not, except that they all, it's, I mean, you'd like to think that it doesn't identify them, but.
To me, it just makes more work. Like, if you just want to know if that staff member is vaccinated or not, you're making all this other work with pool testing, and then if someone tests positive, you know what I mean? Whereas if you're just looking as whether or not Jim is unvaccinated and he has to test weekly, then that's a direct contact. We don't have to retest.
But I think the theory of at least the theory of them all being, well, so you can say it either way you want. If they have to test by either mandate or volunteer, then they're all going to test, and this is what we talked about the other day, that they would all test on the same day anyway, which is de facto a pool. And, you know, the hard part is going to be, but I can say that I can live with this. That's their choice not to do the vaccination. So if they all line up, but Melissa can tell you, how many are you testing right now? It had nothing to do with this. You were testing how many a day?
When they were close contacted, I don't know how many did we have at one point. I feel like we had like 5, 8, 6.
Yes. So it's
And they all
dependent.
lined up, and they were like, and they didn't know if they were vaccinated or not.
Yep.
And so, I think, and my personal thought too is, these are weekly PCR testing, so they are going to pick up a viral load very small, minimal, right? And the idea is, on Tuesday, we do these weekly PCRs on Tuesday, and then hopefully by Thursday, we know of a positive. So we have a positive pool of, say, many unvaccinated. I will do a rapid test on them. They'll do it themselves, but we'll get those done. And the idea is that they're going to get home sooner before they're shedding that virus to our unvaccinated children. Because we talked about this last time, we have seen unvaccinated, vaccinated spread, and it is unvaccinated that is spreading, transmitting it. to others.
Melissa, do we know what percentage of the staff are not vaccinated at this point?
I think we have a good, you have the number?
I have the
That's not
number
accurate.
reported from the main CDC.
That's not accurate, though.
No, I was just saying,
86% of our staff are vaccinated.
yeah.
Okay,
I would
so
say
we're
a
talking
pretty
about
large amount.
Relatively small group of people
I
that
think it's different from school to school.
It is.
But it's still 86% of our
In a
total
total.
population is vaccinated.
In our district, yeah.
So it's a relatively small
It
pool of staff members that.
Yeah, especially when you divide it by three.
Right, yeah. So that's a good thing. So it wouldn't significantly increase the amount of work. It would increase it, but not by, 50% of staff, for example.
Right.
So there's that as a positive, I guess.
And there's potentially some of those staff are already being tested,
Correct.
some of them.
I can speak, well, at the grade school, yes.
So this is a really good, really helpful conversation and timely for me tonight because I'm already scheduled to meet with all three staffs on Friday. I was going to, I have a different thing that was sort of my main point, but I want to be able to provide this too. And I really like, I just would say, I like the notion of, I think my message will be kind of what you said. I think this is not really a question of if, it's a question of when. And give people some suggestions to think about in terms of volunteer for pool, volunteer for testing. They again, at the grade school, there's already a number of people that are doing it. They don't know, the people who are standing out line don't know if the other people are vaccinated or not vaccinated. They're all just being tested, being cautious. What I'm sort of starting to struggle a little bit with myself personally is a little bit what you said to me. It's not you. Please don't take this personally. Because I know there's a lot of people who feel this way. This sort of, don't tell me what to do. And it's like, you know what? We're in a pandemic. We're still, when people want to say that, we're still very much in a pandemic. So I don't want the government telling me I have to. Historically, as long as schools have been in place, the number one things that parents and schools and communities expect from our schools is to keep our kids safe. And should be right that in the same time to keep our people who are in the schools, our teachers, our employees safe as well. So that's always, there has never been a survey or poll of anything of that nature where safety hasn't been the number one thing. So this nobody tells me what to do thing, I don't have any patience for that anymore. I kind of did before, I don't. I think giving them options, I like structured options, I think that's a really good thing. I would like to say, okay, no, you don't want to do it, you don't want to get a vaccination, I'm not telling you have to. I'm telling you you should, but I'm telling you, not, if you can. Obviously, I've known lots of people who have had issues, and I don't want anybody to put themselves in harm's way either. But there are ways around that. I'm just asking, I want to leave the message that says I think people need to look at ways, choose ways to make sure we catch it as quickly as we possibly can. That's what pool testing or regular testing does. So I saw right from the beginning when I heard Biden say this, that President Biden say this, that I felt it was the right thing to do is to say, we're not going to tell you, you have to. We're going to tell you if you don't, then we need to look at this. We need to look at you on a regular basis. And it's not intended, somebody said to me the other night, not the other night, I got an email from, quite frankly, a staff member who was saying, you favor the vaccinated people, the rest of us, you just violate our rights. It's like, I have very little patience for that type of thinking. It's my job, our job is number one is to keep our schools safe. And if people feel that we're being favored, my sense is our decisions to vaccinate or to promote doesn't harm or create an unsafe place for those guys. Whether they want their decision to not be tested on a regular basis so we can catch it early, or to choose not to be vaccinated, which I respect their right to do that, that is potentially harmful to the rest of us.
I think maybe another thing to think about or talk about too is, for how long would they need to be doing this?
vaccination that will be forever, that they feel really comfortable with.
I don't know if we can say.
It's a great question, isn't it? I mean, it really is. My crystal ball is broken. I
I
can't tell
want
you.
somebody to have a
It's
crystal
gonna
ball.
be,
Let's
it's
go.
gonna be forever. It really-
So two things. The first, to piggyback on what you just said, I think probably the safest thing that we can do is say, for the rest of the school year, or until OSHA comes back and gives us different criteria.
Different guys.
Right? But I wanted to also revisit the comment that you made at the beginning of this discussion about your meeting with the nurses and admin and the potential for staff members to test themselves outside of the school environment. I'm just a little concerned with that. I think we would need to really explore how do you ultimately verify that these are true test results that are being returned. And
I'm
that
saying I
they're-
don't want them to.
Right, I know, but I mean, and that they're accurate test results. I'm concerned if we allow that to happen, that there's a significant room for error. I'd like to be able to trust that every employee would report back the correct information, but there's always human error involved in things, and if we can somewhat control that, I think that would be very beneficial to
On
everybody.
top of that, I would be concerned about if that could become costly for people, if they had to go to the doctor and pay co-pays or buy their own kits or whatever, that could get very expensive for people.
Yeah, yeah. So you support what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate that.
That problem of, is also being discussed at Biden's level, which is, right now you can go and get your COVID test basically free, How long does that really cover you if you have to start doing it every week?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's a valid question. But I actually think, as Kelly, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but the point is, I agree, the sooner we start, the better we are. I think the kids will be safer, the staff will be safer. I think that really a discussion with the staff, and it should be, okay, we're having a lot of vacations, we're having breaks, we're having this thing and that thing around here, Luckily, some venues are requiring that you prove that you've been vaccinated, but not everybody is. Not
Or you
not
show a
even the
negative
football
test.
games.
I mean, or you show a negative test.
Yeah.
So, within, 24 hours or whatever
Well, the criteria is still there.
And Tim, I personally suffer with people in my own family that won't do it, okay? But, as I tell them, I say, your job isn't free. It's not that you have a right to that job, okay? Every job comes with requirements. We're saying safety is the number one thing that we've got to do in the school system. And to be safe means people have to be vaccinated, or at least if you want to agree to the weekly test, that's fine too. And it does cover your medical exemption, your religious question type of thing too, as well. But,
I just think
I've always been very firm on saying, my bottom position, actually my real position is everybody should be vaccinated. You want
I guess
to
I'm at
change
this
this
point
point?
where
That's it.
I agree to disagree. in a sense.
No, that's what I understand.
No, I mean, I can
How do you feel about-
agree with the pool testing, I can disagree with it, but agree with it, you know what I mean? I just think we should be very careful that, let them know firsthand, we didn't sit down here and say, this is what we want to do. This is gonna happen anyway, so we're just gonna try to get things rolling now. We're not gonna have a choice, we're not just sitting here demanding. And so I think that's very important to tell people that.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to
I agree.
appreciate this conversation, because it helps me temper my conversation with staff on Friday as well. And really kind of challenge in a non-threatening way the people. I'd like to challenge them to consider getting vaccinated. And if not, then for the safety of the school, it's not just the kids, it's for the safety of the entire school, that we need to, the quickest way we can provide some level of security or safety is to and I can give them some choices. They can go in as an individual and be tested on a weekly basis, or they can join a pool. which we're doing pool testing every week, so that is weekly testing. They join a pool, they choose to join a pool, it becomes even more anonymous, so to speak, you know.
I think everyone's gonna get a shot, you know, it's coming. No one's gonna make a choice on that.
Yeah, well, but the reality is, as I said, I know people who, somebody I'm really pretty close to, had the first shot and spent 8 days in the hospital as a result of that. So, that's,
My
you know.
other thing too is I just gotta say this comment. Bulk of our kids, I'm not saying there's a few, nobody's social distancing. No, they're at events, they're birthday parties, they're playing with each other. These kids are close contacts out for 10 days, well, they're gonna play with the kids that are going to school. This is happening constant. So that's where my frustration is, I guess that's where people like me are frustrated in the sense of, we can agree or disagree with the danger, whatever, but it's just like, what's happening here? Because kids are close contact, kids are out of school that are playing with kids that are in school. Absolutely, like face-to-face, they're touching, licking toys, whatever. And it's like, it's not just a few, we're talking everyone, like sports, it's all everywhere.
And I think you were the one, Tim, you talked about this before, and we know it's true, we heard it from multiple sources, that it's frustrating that people are not following quarantine rules. So if you're quarantining, means you are supposed to stay away. And so on the weekends, they're supposed to stay away from school, and they're staying away from kids while school is going on, but when school is out, they're not. And on the weekends, I think you were the one that was talking about it, the kids are showing up at the rec events on a weekend who are supposed to be quarantining. It's like, you can't be here.
And there's just no way, it's impossible there's so many kids, you know, people that are learning this and they're actually no idea who's quarantining, who's not, it's constant changing.
It isn't, but Melissa and Jolene and the people and all the people who do these, contact these parents, they let them know what they're supposed
The parents know, but that doesn't, the only people that know is the parent. Unless they have few close friends, but.
I hear you, but I can't just say, I can't in good conscience say, the parents aren't doing their job, so we're not gonna follow, we're not gonna make the effort, we have to make.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, that was just more of just a blanket,
I think
people are frustrated.
I hear you.
Those kids are quarantined, they're playing here, why can't, why can't.
And they're right. Melissa's had a hand up for a while.
I wanted to piggyback on the testing thing too. As of yesterday, our local urgent care and our Walgreens were all out of rapid testing. So I was notified that I called urgent care and spoke to a nurse, and they were hoping for a shipment tonight, so that I'm sure that happened. But this is the reality of it too, is that, these are sick kids or sick adults, whoever using our urgent care, that are getting tested. And obviously, a staff member, say I'm unvaccinated, I need to go do my weekly testing, I can't go to urgent care and get a swab, you have to have symptoms. Walgreens, you do not. But a rapid test with no symptoms is not very accurate. So for me, and then also then you throw in home testing. That's been a hot topic. I get pictures every day, a negative test. I'm like, oh, well, you could find that on Google too. No, I hope the parents are doing that right, but it's like we follow the main CDC guidelines, and they do not accept home testing. So I have to just say that, and Jolene has said it for when parents are upset, and I'm like, it's a good surveillance for sure, especially if you've been a close contact and you want to test. And are they the ones that you go sign up at Walgreens? Probably, right? The Binex now that we use at school, most of them are. But I think the shortage is real of rapid testing. Our main schools get a allotted amount per the amount of students, so we can order. We can keep ordering them, and we've been told we're okay. There's not a shortage for what federal applies. So I think that people aren't aware of the shortage that we are experiencing, and the weekly pool testing. And I think sometimes Jeannie and I are on the same page with that. But in the grade school, personally, we have staff hired that are volunteering and hired or whatever, that would take a little bit off of doing the staff that are unvaccinated, at least unless it's positive, right? That would be a little bit more for me and Jolene, but we'll meet that bridge if we have to or when we do. But I think it would be just a good option. And I have asked our staff, and Jolene has too, sent out a couple emails just saying these are the reasons why they're asking for pool testing, whether you're vaccinated or not. And kids are seeing us do it. Like, I'm signed up and I'm gonna go into a preschool classroom and say, this is how you do it, and I'm not, this is just a reality we're living in right now. And that's, whether we believe it or not, we are living it. So I just, that's the home testing and the low amount of testing that's real out there. Thank you. Jolene?
I'm not even sure I remember what I was saying. Oh, I know, we were talking about what children are doing outside of school, even after they've been very well informed that they should be quarantined. And Melissa and I have had some pretty lengthy conversations over this because it creates so much frustration for many people within the school building, outside the school building. But we can only do so much. We can inform them, we can make sure they understand what they should be doing, but beyond these walls, we can't do anything more than that. And it's very hard and very frustrating. And I've had multiple people say to me, did you know that they're here and they're here? And it's been anyone from a mom or a dad or a bus driver, saying, well, I saw them here and I saw them there, but we can't do anything about that. So, we're doing the best we can.
Right, like I said, it's just I have no answer, I was just saying frustration.
Yeah.
People are just like.
And we feel that same frustration.
They're keeping their child home, has no symptoms.
Yep.
And it's frustrating when you see all the kids still out there.
Yes. Yep. And we're feeling that here
Yeah.
too. And the stress levels are so incredibly high. I was saying yesterday, well, I've said it many days, but everything is happening to us. And we don't have any control over anything that's happening right now. And to keep and I'll only speak to the grade school, but to keep the grade school going on a daily basis, some days I'm not even sure how we're getting from one lunch to the next. It's incredibly stressful, and I know people, we can't be as welcoming as we used to be as far as having people in, so I know people don't really know the level of it, but it's difficult for people, but we're all doing the best that we can. And our main job is to keep people safe, to keep kids safe. And I don't know, it's been a rough start. Yeah.
Welcome to the superintendent, to the principalship, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Sue, is there any comments on Zoom or anything?
Did that parent doesn't want to speak?
No.
No?
About Amy?
Yeah.
No, she was just giving me her last name.
Oh,
Because
okay.
for folks in Zoom, they have to remember that they have to do their first and last name, and if they put it in the chat, I can change it for them, just so anyone knows.
Okay, you have a person who just has their first name and cell?
Yes, and I'm waiting for that person to provide me with their last name.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Is there anything else you want to talk about as far as the return to school protocol? Well, I have a question. Remember at our last meeting, we talked about maybe just reaching out to the parents and letting them know that you guys were working on. How's that going?
Good. So every Friday I send out a letter. It's called Rambler's School News.
Nice.
And so the first couple of weeks I sent out an alert, but the second time, which was last Friday, the alert said, just so that we don't keep bothering you with alerts,
Right.
just know that every Friday you can go to that spot on the website and just click there and find the updates. And I haven't gotten a lot of feedback from it,
Okay.
but that's okay. Usually that's a good sign. No
Yeah.
feedback is usually in my eyes positive. So I'm hoping it's a positive thing. It's usually just one letter and, you know, one sheet, one page, and I just kind of highlight what's happening and what's coming up.
Great. And how has it been going with the number of kids that are being quarantined and getting the work to them and things
It's
like that?
It's better,
Oh, good.
because the Wednesday that we were given to work, every single PLC or grade level team created what their plan was if one, you know, if 1 to 4 kids happened to be quarantined, or if the whole class was quarantined,
Great.
and sent those home to parents,
Excellent.
and also gave me copies of what those plans look like.
Great. So those parents kind of know what will be coming.
Yes.
Excellent. That's awesome.
Does it tend to be low-tech work?
Combination.
Okay.
Combination, what they were encouraged to do at this point was to make sure that kiddos who were quarantined, it would be a combination of low-tech and tech, depending on the grade level. And also to make sure that even the littles were included at least for the morning meeting. Because when they're out for such a long period of time, they lose connections with those friends and those kiddos. And last week I happened to be in our first grade classroom during morning meeting, and there were 4, actually 5. The little 5th one popped up while I was in there, because there were only like 4 or 5 on the floor, and there were 4 or 5 home that were, you know, coming on to the morning meeting. So I had an opportunity myself to see them too, and to say good morning to them, because the biggest concern for me right now is to make sure those kiddos stay connected, and that the relationships that they've, you know, been building, they can continue to just have that connection with their friends and their teacher and what's happening at school.
Might help with that feeling of isolation a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And then the older ones have connected even more, like if they're able to bring them in during, well, as a matter of fact, I saw a 3rd grade little crew the other day, it was last week. There were 3 of them sitting next to their door in the hall, and there were 2 plus a laptop. And I was like, hey, who are you guys talking to? And there was one of our little young girls that was home in quarantine. And so I popped on there too. I was like, hey! And they were writing. They were doing writing workshop.
Good.
So, yeah.
So they're doing some interactive
Yeah.
stuff even. Oh, that's
Yeah.
excellent.
So when you can pop down there, I would not.
And just for a preschool mom, meaning my daughter she was in quarantine and then isolation, so she literally only had, the last meeting, I think she had 1 day, and then and Jolene and I talked about this, so she's in the afternoon pre-K, and they did story time with her, and they're like, hi Natalie, and it was awesome, and honestly, when she came back, she felt like she knew them. She only knew one girl that she's known since they were little, but otherwise she felt really comfortable for a 4-year-old coming back to school with, 15 other children. So it was, for me personally, it was a really good feeling, and I know it was nerve-wracking for the teachers, but I said, hey, she can be our guinea pig, right? Like, and my husband was home with her, and my son too, as well, so he helped her with the computer part, and so it all worked out, but it really was a great experience for her, so.
But your son's
And my
teacher
son
also
still,
is in-
yeah, so he had to do the whole 20 days. He is, so unfortunately, it's been, poor kid. And yes, he's been able to do morning meeting, and it was more like a lesson learned, like everyone's, learning as we go, and teachers are bending over backwards and doing amazing work, and Jolene's been helping them. So they ask for feedback as much as they can, and they appreciate it. So my son Johnny, he's been able to do morning meeting, and then, he'll get back on Tuesday, hopefully with pool testing and negative, knock on wood, right? But, it's, as a parent, I feel fortunate that it's gone as best as we can in this circumstance.
And I know there have been a number of people who are concerned about the work and not being prepared for that. And, I think, and I may be wrong with this, but I think down the road, when we look back on this, particularly if this eases up on us at some point fairly soon, we'll see that it's probably the best it could have been. because, you know, in a non-COVID year, when school is doing well, the first, 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes up to a month, is really about assessing and sort of figuring out. It's not really like a lot of new stuff. Now, obviously, the older you get, you get to high school, and particularly if you're an AP class, that's a whole different world. But particularly for our younger kids, it's not like they're in the middle of some new learning, and then they have to go off for 10 to 20 days, which is horrible. Like the timing, while it's been exceptionally hard, particularly for the grade school, what the students are missing, I think it's less of an impact than it would be otherwise. And I should also say something that my wife shared with me last night, and probably you guys already saw this and don't think much about it. But our 12th graders this year, the last time they had a normal year was 9th grade. 9th grade. And you can go, 11, 8, 7, whatever, you can go backwards from there. So it's, so last time you got a normal year only was 8th grade. Yeah. I mean, it's sad. It really is. And it's really, it's just too bad. So there is one other pretty major thing on here that I'd like your input on. I planted the seed last meeting, I think. But I think as time has gone on, I said I would wait to see. We are maybe, I say that very hesitantly, plateauing. I don't think we're in any sort of decline. You know that I've been monitoring the numbers in Winthrop since mid-July, and I think it was 3 weeks ago we spiked at 18. Now we went down to 13. These are all positive cases, and these are not schools. These are all in Winthrop. And then it went down to 11, then it went to 13. This week it's 10. At best, we can hope that's a plateau, because prior to that, from the middle of July until the 18th, the most in 1 week was 6. So we're far from out of the woods, any stretch. I was really hoping, I wish the numbers would come out on Wednesday instead of Thursday, so this week's will be out tomorrow. I didn't see it, but so we'll see. But I guess where I want to go with this is, I had mentioned before that we talked about possibly looking at modifying the calendar. The commissioner is supporting this. The superintendents are on the Kennewick Valley group. A number of them are already planning to do this, and that's to look at some days, modifying the days to very intentionally call them remote days. And I mentioned this before, that maybe the week of Thanksgiving, which is a 2-day week for us, Monday and Tuesday we have school on the 22nd and 23rd. Maybe, and I will put this on, unless you blast me out of the water right tonight, put this on as a vote. I wouldn't ask you to vote on it tonight. That we consider that Monday and Tuesday of that week be remote days. It gives us over a month to let our parents know so they can plan. That's the biggest concern, that we don't give them enough notice. We certainly did last year. But I'd like to suggest, and I think given, and you might say, well, who knows where it's going to be. I'm pretty confident I can say that in November, even if things change at the beginning of November, I think it's taking its toll on our kids, it's taking its toll on our teachers, and I think we need to think about how to have some sort of something different. And it's not like we're saying, let's have those, some schools are talking about, can we just have 2 days with no school? I'm not asking that. I'm not hearing the association ask for that. I'm not hearing the administrators ask for that. We're just saying, can we talk about making that a remote day? So that's what I'm throwing out there for you guys to think about.
What would that look like in terms of the teachers?
They would come in and work,
Okay.
and work in their classrooms, and they would kind of like what Going Red looked like last year. They would have time to plan between now and then about whether or not they're, what does it look like pre-K through 2? What does it look like 3 through 5? And they have time to sort of plan and prep for that type of thing.
Okay, so there would be a planning and a prep time for them in case it goes right? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm I'm saying that we would treat that like those 2
They
days.
would
like they
treat it
were
like
kids.
a trip, okay. So that they would engage with the kids.
So,
They have regular
yeah, that's what
classes.
happens, you probably should have children, but basically what happens usually is, and again, it varies from grade to grade, because we certainly don't want our 5 and 6 year olds on devices for 7 hours during the day. That would be ridiculous. So it's sort of a combination of touching base and then letting them go do their work, sort of like the morning meeting. High school, last year, some of the high schools did their full schedules, and so they would be on for their full, how long are your periods again?
70 minutes.
Yeah, 70 minutes, and, you know, and I said to people, that's not my expectation, is, 70 minutes, if I were teaching a 70-minute class, if I kept the kids for 20 to 25 minutes each day that I'm doing it, that probably is enough. We need to, and if you think about what a good structured lesson is you have some review, some instruction, and then some time to do that. And then you sort of repeat that the next day. And so I'm just saying, if we plan now, we can notify the parents in advance. When I say now, I don't mean tonight, I mean next meeting. And then we can, we can also let the teachers know so they will prepare for knowing those 2 days are remote.
I'm concerned, guys, that think about with making it either Monday, Tuesday, and Thanksgiving vacation is that, well, no, people taking time off from work may become very difficult in that week because other people have already requested it off, and operational needs will allow that in some companies. So I think we need to be really thoughtful about deciding if that's really the best time to do that.
Doesn't that become an issue regardless of if we look to extend anything? Joe, at one point, we were just kind of bantering this around, said, why don't we look at extending Columbus Day this coming week? I said, well, it's a little too soon to, probably would have been perfect, from a need standpoint. But I think, I don't disagree with what you're saying, I just don't know that it's going to be any better or worse. For me, it's really about giving them as much notice as they possibly can.
I think anytime you involve a major holiday, people who don't have kids have asked for time off. So the staff, like my request for time off straight after Christmas has already had to be in. So now we throw something like that, and either I have to give up my time off that I already requested for the daytime because of operational needs, or my boss has to say sorry. So I worry about that. That should it really be the same week as a major holiday?
Just seemed, I guess another thing that we were thinking about, those who were discussing this, is that essentially it does have, you go from Friday, whatever it is, the 19th, whatever it is, and then you have the full 5 days, and then you have the weekend. So you really do have, and again, it's maybe a pipe dream that people will, they certainly won't be quarantining, but hopefully they'll be just with their family, and there won't be as much socializing as there is, for a good 10 days. That's one of the things it was sort of the argument before. There was some conversation, I don't remember if we talked about it here or not, that, when we started off with the number of positives that we have, it's like, well, we should, if you follow the strict CDC guidelines, we were over the threshold for an outbreak, which last year we would have had no choice. We had an outbreak, we would have had to close. We didn't close this year. We closed for 1 day. God knows we paid for that, but that's so this is sort of that same sort of. Well, but I'm sorry. What we were thinking was, even if we closed, the reason we started with so many positive cases beginning there is exactly what Timothy was saying. That these kids are all playing together. They're all over each other, whatever the case may be. And this is why it's so prevalent in our youngest kids, because they just are so close and whatever. So I think we're hoping that if we get through October and November, that if we have a good 10-day stretch where they're essentially not in school, that maybe, if they're not, it is the Thanksgiving week, they don't spend a lot of time socializing with their non-family friends and such, and I don't know. It's a combination of a lot of things, but that's, you bring up a very legitimate point. I don't know if there's a better way to, or a better time to look at it.
I don't know either, I just needed to.
No, it's a good point. It's an excellent point, fair
So
point.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on the point of doing this. It would be to help stem new cases. This is to help kind of suppress new cases.
I think it's not a need, it's multiple needs. I think I think in terms of thinking about, we talk about a social emotional wellness for our kids, we think about a social emotional wellness for our staff. I think it does give us an opportunity to have an extended opportunity that they're not gathering in people, and they're not going to be, it's not going to be in the middle of rec season. They're not going to be, so the potential of them being away from each other and spending time more with just their family. Sometimes it's worse. It's just a multitude of reasons to look at doing that.
The other reason why I'm asking is that, I mean, that is, as far as giving notice, that's great. But on the other side, if we go from being at a plateau to even less cases, are we going to have parents saying, why are we doing this? Because we don't really need it. I'm just throwing that out there to think about.
Again, that's a very fair question. I think what I'm saying is I sort of be held off on looking at this earlier with trying to take some time before this because the numbers just didn't substantiate that. We were hoping. When it hit 18, I was kind of hoping we were trending down, but I think I think we spiked at 18, and now I think we've plateaued. We are not down here. We're here. We're kind of going that way. And my guess is I'm not seeing anything in the numbers that suggest that in the next 2 or 3 weeks that we're going to be looking at smaller and back into single digits and lower than that. So I think it's just trying to look at a multitude of things, notice. And all those types of things. And I did say that starting this by saying that the commissioner is supportive of this. And there are schools, Kennebec Valley schools, that are already taking a look at doing this.
Okay. Emily?
Could we maybe consider having the 2 days after the Thanksgiving break be remote days? And then that would give time for if they are traveling or spending time in groups over that holiday, then we would see if they have symptoms, and they could, if they do have symptoms, those would arise before coming back to school.
So I don't think that's a bad idea. The issue is then if we have so if we have no school on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 7. That's pretty good. If we don't have school on the 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, that's 9 days. So it's on the 10th day they come back, a couple more. So you just get that, obviously, get that additional weekend in there. So I think either one of those would work. In fact, your thought about kids coming back from, but the reality is, and the nurses said this last time, that there was, reading what's in the comment. What we're finding, what was a little bit different, and I think Dr. McCall said this last meeting, that we're seeing more and more kids that are asymptomatic up till day 7 or 8, and they become symptomatic on day 8 or 9, or sometimes 10. I think that's a little more prevalent with the Delta than before. So I don't know.
Sue? I have 2 comments in the chat. Okay. Says, if in-person learning is best, why are we thinking of adding unnecessary remote days? I don't think many parents will be supportive of this. That is one comment. And the other is, I agree with that comment. It also sounds like the days are selected arbitrarily based on convenience, not data. The kids already lost so many in-person days. Does it make sense to add more unnecessarily?
I'm not sure that I would agree with either of those comments. I think it isn't random. It's very, it's sort of already gone through why we selected that time. And I think that one of the things we do have to consider is I think we've done a good job of trying to keep our students in school. As I mentioned before, we certainly passed the threshold for outbreak and we didn't close our school. And I think our teachers have been, really pushed hard. I don't mean to put you or Tim on the spot, but you guys are dealing with this in your roles as teachers as well.
We just can't keep, I don't know, I can't keep up right now. That's in my classroom. It's just you're trying to deal with the kids that aren't there, and you have the kids that are there. You never know who's coming in, who's coming out. You've got to get those folders ready or work on the fly, and you have someone watch your classroom while you're trying to do that. It's constant stress.
Yeah, I think it's just trying to not get people to the breaking point.
I was just gonna say too, and I'm not gonna put Jolene on the spot, but I am sort of, what would this do for the mental health of your staff? I know the grade school has been hit hard. I know the learning lab has been pulled daily to sub. They haven't even gotten some of the training done that they need to do. There's a new person in that position. And they're pulled daily to cover classes. Other teachers are losing their preps because they're covering classes. I heard of a classroom that had 5 different people covering because they couldn't get a sub.
Yeah.
Teachers are working overtime, and not that this is about the teachers, but it is. I mean, if your teachers break down, you're not going to have teachers to teach your kids. And I just think, last year they had Wednesdays off, well, not off, but they had Wednesdays you could relax with the maths a little bit. We're in schools now from 8 until 3 with these things on our face with pretty much no break at all. It's exhausting. And I just, I think for the mental health of some of our staff, it would help. It gives us an opportunity, or gives them an opportunity to do some of those things they haven't been able to do because they've lost 5 preps in a week, or they've lost planning time, or they've lost time to meet with colleagues to do that. And they're still working. They're still going to be interacting with the kids, so I'm all for it.
Sue? So comment on the chat. It says, is this proposal being made as a reward for teachers? I apologize if I missed the rationale. Can you please share? If that's the reason, we should be clear about that.
So let me I thought I already said that is certainly a part of this that we look at, and again, I don't want to put Julie in the spot or anybody else, or you, Sue, I mean, you look at your own staff. People are really, it's much more challenging than I think people realize. It's a little frustrating. I think these are really good questions, but it's really frustrating to not think that we need to worry about the social, emotional wellness of our staff. That certainly is a part of it. Having an opportunity, having a time when kids are less likely to be intermingling with each other. In the end of November would certainly be that time. It just seems that it's not arbitrary. I think it's very intentional to look at again, I think about where people are at now. This is still 6 weeks away. If the COVID, and it goes to your question, Sue, if the number of cases stay the same, that means the pressure on our schools remains the same. And so, yeah, there certainly is a part of it about, that we need to look at the social emotional health of our staff as well as our students. I think we've done everything we can up to this point to only focus on the social emotional wellness of our students. And we need to. That's our #1 priority, and we'll continue to do that. But at some point, we do need to give some consideration to the people who take care of the people, and that's our staff. But that's not the only reason, and so I would respectfully disagree. I don't want that. I certainly would not say this is a reward. I think it's a recognition of the challenges that they've been dealing with, and that we have an opportunity where we can give a break that makes some sense on a number of different levels, and we go with it.
Kelly?
I don't think that we can make the argument that kids will be away from other people. Kids are gonna go to daycare. They're gonna be surrounded by different people for a full day, just not their classmates that they're with all the time. I think that brings in an added level of kids are all over each other all the time. Now we're introducing, instead of, for example, my son just going to daycare for maybe an hour to an hour and a half at the end of the day, he will be there the whole day doing his distance learning there while I work, because I won't be able to get a time off.
Correct.
So I don't know that that's a good argument for why we do it, because it just introduces a different group, cohort of people that these kids would be surrounded by essentially.
I think that's definitely true for a percentage of our kids, but it's not necessarily true for all of them. I think you're right, I'm not discounting, I mean, both things you said, I completely agree with. So the question for me ultimately comes down to whatever you guys decide, obviously we live with, but is doing nothing better than doing something?
Sometimes.
Maybe, I'm not suggesting, I'm just saying, that's kind of where we're at. I've got people, the people are, when I meet with the administrators or the association, that's a sort of big question. And some of the things we did last year, we can't do this year. We can't do Wednesdays. I mean, we could, but I think it's pretty clear where the community feels about that. We can't even do things like, last year we gave financial incentive. That's not gonna happen again, so I think it's a fair question for the staff to say at some point, how can you help us? Can you give us something? Can you throw us a bone? I think that's legit.
So, can I just really quickly ask the two of you, what would the significant mental health difference be between having your students in your classroom with you for 2 days, or you reporting to your classroom and having to educate your students remotely?
Oh, huge.
Huge.
Yeah, you're not dealing with all the small little things of just distraction, a little behavior here or something, it's just constant. You're sitting and teaching, and it's a lot more relaxed. Plus, you're on the side, you can get a few other things done. Parent phone calls, get an IP ready, just those things that are just sitting at your desk that you just can't get in. It's just more just relaxing, just calm, it's quiet.
So you would have your entire ed tech staff who, well, no, I shouldn't say that, because a lot of them probably would be doing stuff special ed wise, with students on Zoom and things like that as well. But, whereas I teach a 70-minute class, I might only teach a 20-minute class, and now I've got 50 minutes to go meet with someone I haven't been able to meet with because we don't have common planning time, or we haven't been able to meet, or maybe I'm gonna rip out my math workbook pages because I haven't had time to do that because I've had to cover for this teacher or do that. So you can get a lot more done when kids are there. And I know that's not why we teach.
Right.
Absolutely not why we teach. I'd much rather have my kids in front of me, but given that time, especially since Winthrop has no time anymore, we're right bang back to 5 days full time. And we still have the same issues we're having last year and new ones. Now you've got half a class out, or part of a class out, or 4 kids going out for 10 days, and then now you've got 6 more going out for 2 days, and tracking them, and who's out where, and when are they coming back. Yeah, it's...
And no staff, and it's like, yesterday I lost half my staff, because they were teachers.
Yeah.
So then you're just constantly just trying to get through that.
Sue, so one is a chat, there's something in the chat, but also as far as, you're gonna read this in my director's report for next month. And I just as some information so that you have some data. So in special ed alone, 12% of my staff absences have been due to COVID. Of those absences, of all the absences that we've had, 11% have not required a sub, so it's been end of the day, it hasn't impacted students. Only 20% of my vacancies have been filled this year, and 69% were filled with what I'm calling creative coverage, and that's things like my social workers are filling in, my behavior interventionist is filling in, I'm filling in. We're doubling students up. We're using student absences to take one staff member and put them with somebody else. we've been creative, but my staff is getting tired. They're not getting the breaks that they need. We're having to say, hey, can you take like 2 minutes short on your lunch so that we can get this kid to this place? And we are running really, really ragged. My staff is great. They are putting in effort every single day, and I'm very appreciative of that. We'll do what we need to do. We'll be here for the kids. But just so that you have some specific data, and you'll get that in my report next month. But in the chat box, it asked a question, are other schools taking extra days off to support the emotional health of teachers? Could a list of examples be provided? And also, thank you for this discussion.
So, there are definitely other schools that are doing it. I did not write down.
MSC 54 on Friday.
Okay, well, we took Wednesday off, essentially the same thing. And again, I want to, because this is being recorded, never know when people might look at this. Jolene let me know on Sunday night that she was really going to struggle to cover Monday and Tuesday of that week. And Wednesday was a virtual possibility because of the number of people that weren't going to be there. And I just said to her, we have to make it through Monday and Tuesday, so find some way to do that. Because we need to let our parents know give them as much notice as possible. So we did. So I see that. That wasn't nearly as, that was immensely helpful, I think. And I think that's part of what we're thinking about here. But to give as much time. Realistically, if we do this, we will be in November, and then we'll be and there will be, this break. And then we'll be in December, and there will be a natural break there. And then I think we reassess. As Dr. McConnell said, who knows? In January, we could be looking at our significantly reduced rate, due positives and such. I think we just reassess them. But to answer the question in the chat, there are other schools. I did not write them down. I will meet with them. Yep, said 54 is one. That's going in. You guys are?
Well, no, but I would say if the commissioner's already okaying these days, there's got to be schools asking.
Yes.
And it can't be just 1 or 2.
No, what I will
Or they're
do.
recognizing the need.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is I will, when I run the meeting tomorrow, I will take better notes. I didn't know I was going to be asked that question. It's a legit question. And so I would certainly take a look at what other schools are proposing, taking time, and when they're looking to take it. I know some are talking about doing what we're talking about, or suggesting now. We're going to vote on it. You won't vote on it until at least the next meeting, which is the 20th, October 20th, which is about a month in advance of when this would happen. But obviously, this will become, we're having this meeting and discussion tonight, so people will be kind of aware of what's happening. So I will say I'm not hearing these people ask because I don't really know these people that well, but I think the questions are very well stated and good. And probably not from people who have heard things like, well, that's what the teachers are supposed to do, and they need to be in school, and the parents will be really unhappy if the kids stay home. I get when parents say, don't call me tonight, tell me tomorrow my kid's not coming, so I can't go to school. That's really, really hard. That's why I've said this in the last meeting, talk about it more tonight, and we'll act on it next meeting if that's the case. I get it. There's no perfect scenario. 5 days a week is best for parents. It's best for kids. It's been a real huge challenge for our staff, and I think they've answered the bell time and time again with respect to doing what they need to do. Asking our parents to know a month in advance that their kids are going to be home for 2 additional days is not best for parents. It is not necessarily best for kids. I don't think it's horrible for kids, but I think that's what we kind of have to do as we go through this whole process. This real challenge is to figure out how can we keep it as normal as possible, and we use the word balance. So right now, I think the teachers are taking it on the chin and doing an amazing job. And I don't know if it was, I think it might have been you, Jolene, that said, because people aren't in the schools, they don't see it. They don't see what's going on. It's I was, you know, a number of times I've been up, you know, I covered in, I don't know how many classrooms to give teachers a break. There's one with a third grade teacher who has, Nurse Melissa said earlier, third grade's been the hardest hit. And I walked into one of the third grade teachers' classrooms and I said, they were doing sustained silent reading, so it wasn't like I needed to do any, you know, specific instruction. I said, just go. And she's like, no, they're just reading. I said, that's exactly what I mean. Just go. Take 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Just get out of here. Because she hadn't been out of her room all day. And, you know, it's that type of stuff. And this is the beginning of October. I don't think it's going to get significantly better between now and November. And the last thing I want to do is say, well, let's wait and see. I think let's make a decision, recognize the situation, and then my recommendation obviously is that we do this and we vote on it next time. So,
Jolene?
I just wanted to add one last thought maybe for people to think about. So the entire staff at the grade school, and I say the entire staff because everyone there is they're a team of champions and they are a village. And they step up and fill in, and I think it's just who teachers are anyways, but this staff is phenomenal. So they've been doing that, and that's how we've been successful at, you know, continuing day by day by day. If the staff has to be out, and I say has to because no one's choosing to take a luxurious day and put their feet up and have bonbons and coffee. They're out due to COVID, the impact of COVID, however that might be. There have been hospitalizations that they're out for. There have been, they're out because they have to be out. I have no one that is just choosing to be out. But my fear is that if we don't take and recognize the mental health of our staff, we are going to have staff that is out. And they're going to be out sick. And they have in their contract, I believe it's 20, leave paid days. And if we have staff that starts needing to be out because it's terrible right now. If we have staff that starts needing to be out, then what are we going to do? If I have 5 or 6 staff, and I know there are many staff that need a break right now, I talked to some staff and said, you need to not be here tomorrow. Because that's how hard it is. People are at a cracking point. So we can say that we don't think it's a good idea to maybe have those 2 remote days, but it's going to turn into weeks of time that people are going to be out because they're not going to be healthy enough to sustain this. It's not sustainable. So we can either decide to make proactive decisions, or we can be reacting to what's happening to us.
On the flip side of that, you think if they knew something like that was coming, it would help them to hang on?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
Yep.
Emily and then Erin.
I can't speak for the grade schoolers and I can't speak for parents, but from what I've heard from the high school, being out for long stretches of time definitely is tough, but I think if it's just a day or 2 and we know in advance and the teachers are able to prepare in advance, I don't think that has a huge negative impact on our learning. And we feel when the teachers are stressed out and when they don't feel like they have enough time to prepare. We want them to be prepared and feel comfortable and as relaxed as they can be at this time. So I do support this idea, and I think a lot of students would.
Thank you. Erin?
I've been down about 25% of my staff, which is only 2 people, but when you only have 8 people, 2 people is 25%. Since the first day of school, because either the staff person had COVID or because they have children with COVID that they can't come to work. My situation is that I'm coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning and doing the work of my staff, and at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my job begins. Because I still have to work 40 or 50 hours a week, and usually September it's more like 60. to get everything done in my job. So I'm at the high school until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And I sit there saying, I'm 62 years old. How long can I keep this up? I'm exhausted. I know she's exhausted. I know she's exhausted. You know, look around this room and say, how long can you keep it up? And I don't have, you know, highly trained staff that, you know, my staff are just, you know, regular people that don't have college degrees that could go get 10 other jobs. They have no incentive to stay in these jobs if they're gonna, you know, every day you see the grade school kitchen staff go out in the dining room at the break time, take off their mask and shove food in their mouths and put their mask back on and go back to work every day, and they're legally entitled to a 30-minute break. Every day my middle school staff leave without ever having had breakfast or lunch because they don't have time. How long can you keep it up? You know, there's not anybody that can keep this up long term.
Thank you, Erin. All right, so you'll put it on the agenda to vote on the
Yes.
next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for all your input. Sharon, is there anything else that you wanted to go over for the return to school protocol?
I don't think, no, I don't think so. I think I'm good.
Anybody else? No. Okay. So we will move on to new business. I will move to approve remote days. I will entertain a motion to approve remote days as student days as long as students are provided with the opportunity for breakfast and lunch as well as a plan for student work. These days will count towards the required 175 days.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. Sally?
Does this directly speak to what we just talked about, or is this like days that kids are quarantined?
No, it's definitely not quarantined. It is not directly, it does kind of, it's not intentional that followed that. It was, again, intentional in terms of the governor. The commissioner has said, what we'd already talked about, that our snow days will be used as remote days, and we need to, in order for that to happen, we have to vote as a school committee to do this, which essentially means if we have snow days, we will feed or offer to feed our kids, and the board needs to take that action.
How do we offer to feed our kids if you don't know that we're gonna have a snow day until the 9
So, Aaron, let me answer before you want to answer. Go ahead.
What we do is we buy shelf-stable meals, which are not ideal, but they are food. And we ask families to sign up for what they would receive these meals. We were doing about 150 to 175 last year. They would sign up. I sent 2 meals home. So then when one snow day was called, they had that shelf-stable meal to eat. And then I would send another one home. And then I kept that up throughout the year so that the ones that signed up received meals that they would keep. And it even includes shelf-stable milk. So that ideally the families would put them in the pantry, and then when there's a day where they're staying home, they have something to feed their children if they're in a situation where they had nothing else.
Also, the other thing we said, and I would stick to this, and Erin was willing to do this, I don't think it's crazy because she lives so far away. And again, talking to other superintendents that are on our Zoom that are in smaller communities, Winthrop is blessed that geographically we're not that large, so I would, I said that I would certainly volunteer. We've delivered meals before on studies. Last year we were fortunate. We guessed right twice, I guess if you could say, that we do. One time we called school off on Wednesday, and I called it off on Monday. So they were able to prepare things in advance and whatever. The other day I called it before the end of the day. So again, the kitchen staff could prepare stuff and send it home with them. So we. That's our obligation to do that. And worst case in my mind is that this is what we're planning on, that we let parents know as part of the message. If it's not in advance, we let them know that if they need meals, they let us know. We give a number they can call in and we will give meals.
One of the most difficult things about this is procurement, and we're in a real crisis with procurement right now. Every single day on my deliveries, I'm shorted food that I ordered, and I can't get it from anybody else. And the problem with the shelf-stable stuff is that all the schools suddenly go, oh, yeah, I better get this stuff, and, you know, the purveyors are inundated, and you can't get many. Either that or you get too many and you're left over with them in the spring. Last year, we didn't have a lot of snow days, so we ended up with a lot left over in the spring, and they're expensive. So it is an issue because, like right now, if I wanted to buy those foods, I could not get them. They would not be available from my vendors. And many ingredients that I want on a daily basis are not available right now from our vendors. So schools across the state are in the same position where they can't get the foods they need.
So I was just talking with someone, because this whole snow day debate's been all over every school. And Aaron, you may already know this, but North Center, and I don't remember the other company, the past 2 years or COVID years, they have done bagged lunches, so to speak, that you can buy pre-prepared, but they are shelf-stable food, because so many schools have had issues with this. I don't know the cost. Oak Hill is, the woman who works there is the one that I spoke with. That's what they order, and they just give it to their kids the night before or whatever else. But it's, and I know it's a company maybe, I just can't think of the name of the company, but it might be worth looking into, and maybe that is what you're already.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking, I have two vendors, Dennis and.
Dennis, that's it.
And, PFG North Center, and they're just out of stock on those items.
Oh, she didn't mention that, but she
Yeah,
said that's what, you know.
Or else they wanted me to tell them last week how many I'm gonna need in December, you know. Sure, I'll get out my crystal ball.
Somebody needs to get a crystal ball. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Vote passes unanimously.
And who made the motion?
Jana,
Who was second?
Kelly. Okay, next on the agenda is, it says discussion regarding school committee self-evaluations. The only thing we really need to discuss is when we want to have the discussion.
We talked about possibly doing it after our,
10-20 meeting.
yes, that same night.
Yep.
Just later after, like, I don't know, you have to go into executive session for that.
No.
I don't think you need to, but you can
You
you can just choose to address it when all of the business is done.
Okay.
Because again, it's, unless you want to do the executive session, anybody who chooses to stay, listen to the voice, they're welcome to stay.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like people to be welcome if they wanted to listen to that.
Well, then it'll be under old business, it'll be under old business, no, it's not under new business, it'll be under old business, and I'll just put it at the end of old business.
Okay.
How does everybody else feel about that? You okay with that?
Yeah, I just had one question. Yeah, so I already kind of went through mine, but part of what I was wondering about was, there's a, board meeting observations.
Yes.
Are we sharing that with any of the public who come so that they can do this as well? 'Cause
No,
that's
this
kind
is
of
a self-evaluation, it's just us.
Okay, but this kind of looked like it was, to be used by people who don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, I think we'll just do it with us, and then, and actually you can use this meeting as your meeting with your evaluation.
Do we have to have that done next week, in 2 weeks? It's all written up, done?
I would think so, because that's what we're going over, right?
Right, I actually, if you guys wouldn't mind having it done a little bit before, I could kind of pull it together.
Didn't we meet last year and do this together and then report it out? Well, that was Jim's evaluation. Okay.
That was Jim's, yeah, but I don't think we did this last year.
I don't think we did either.
Right. So, I'm sorry, can we get into what you said?
When did it go?
When?
How did we get that?
Oh,
Pass it on.
take a picture and send it
Yeah.
to Libby?
Can you do that?
Okay.
Good luck, Kelly. Our AC.
Scan it,
Our AC.
scan it to your fax machine, to an email, or
Yeah,
I'll
you can
fax
take a picture
it,
of your phone and just email me.
photocopier?
You can call me, whatever, you know,
Just
or just,
okay.
so.
Okay, so after, yeah, so what I would suggest you do, and do, we can just cover this next time, you can, the agenda's put together in a particular order, but you're not required to specifically stick to it if you sort of make this decision, so we'll go through old business, new business was after.
Yeah.
Whatever, wherever we put it, then just finish the agenda, and then just go back to, this, including school, public comment and school committee comments, then you can do this and then adjourn.
Could we include it as part of the school committee comments and just have that be our comments?
Well, it technically is
Yeah.
business.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the idea of putting it last. Okay, so could people have it to me by October 17th, that's a Sunday? That we can be a few days to put things together?
Do I win?
October 17th? Yep. Okay. I know you kind of.
You're going to have to text me that day, and...
Yeah,
Please, too, okay?
I'm going to get together and go over it.
Okay, I would, yeah, I can do that.
Or if you don't, that's fine too, whatever works for you, Jana. Okay, any other thoughts or questions about the self-evaluation? Okay. Next would be the enrollment report.
Yeah, let me
Go through it.
flip through it, yeah. So the good news is our numbers, as predicted, are up. The bad news is they're not up as much as I was hoping they were going to be. And if you look at it from a historical perspective, they're down still pretty substantially. But I would say that we didn't know, we're up a pretty healthy chunk of students. And we didn't know at the time we were sort of making this prediction what the COVID situation was going to be. So we still have a pretty substantial number of homeschool students. We were kind of feeling like we were, by having no remote option this year, we would have more students coming back to us, and that has proven to be true. But the reality is this: the grade school, in the month leading up to the start of school, picked up 70 students. That means middle school and high school actually had a reduced number of students, because you can see that the total enrollment as of the end of September is 847. Last year, 1st September, was 800. So that's only up 47. If the grade school itself is up 70, it means the middle school and high school collectively are down 23. So, we'll kind of keep, so in hindsight, we know what's going on with Delta, know what's still going on with homeschooling options. It's pretty good. It's going to be, it's going to benefit us positively with our ED 279 this year. Approximately, and I shouldn't even say this because somebody will hold me to this and it won't. But generally speaking, with nothing else in the formula changes, every additional student is worth about $8,000. I'm going to say that again, nothing else in the formula changes. Because basically they redistribute that pie over the entire state. So while our numbers are going up, our evaluation is probably not going up tremendously. Those are the two biggest factors. But if you have a place that has a substantial increase and a substantial decrease in evaluation over this next year, then we're not going to see the net positive result. But in any way, you look at it, 47 additional students is going to be a positive number for us. So that's good news, especially at 55%. God knows what it's going to turn out to be. So our hope, or my hope, was that this past year we carried over $320,000. I mentioned earlier the auditors here. I mean, all these pieces sort of fit in together, but the auditors are here, and and we're whole with the town again, so we should be able to identify a number less than 320,000, offset by a positive gain on the 279, so that our audited balance forward is going to be somewhere closer to what I think it should be for a school our size, which is, probably around $200,000. So if we make up 320,000, if we make up part of the 320,000, at the 279, which we potentially could, and we don't have to carry $320,000 more forward for the audited balance, but we can carry over something more like 200,000, then we're netting probably an additional $500,000 in revenue towards our, or supporting our budget next year.
It didn't sound like you referenced the 400,000.
From this year?
Yeah,
That's good, it's from this year.
but we're not allowed to spend it this year.
Right. You will have to make a decision, when the auditors are done, you'll have to make a decision what to do with that. So I'm actually glad you asked that question, because Bernice and I were talking about that today. If there are people who are on the board who are thinking that we'll use that money to offset taxes next year, I will tell you now, and I will be consistent throughout the process, I would caution you against doing that. Because that's essentially, the way it came to us was as one-time monies. It was money after we had already set what the revenue streams were going to be. We know we're going to have that additionally left over, so I think we treated a little tiny bit like we treated our COVID money, which was one-time money, what are the one-time expenditures. I will be, again, meeting with Jeff on Tuesday, and we'll talk, and I've already talked to Bernice a little bit about some of the things that we're looking to do, some reserve funds and possibly some community-based opportunities, and that will have to be run through the council, the approving body in terms of those types of things. But what I would caution you against is this, thinking that, well, we'll take that $20,000, we'll just give it back to the taxpayer. It sounds really great, except a year from now, we don't have that $20,000, so we end up creating a dip and a huge spike, and that's not good fiscal responsibility.
So I know this pulls away from enrollment a little bit, but what types of one-time expenditures are kind of already earmarked for that money?
Well, it could be some of the capital improvement. I would say almost all of it is capital improvements for those types of changes. I don't really, I have a couple of things in the back of my mind, but I don't really want them to kind of be out there until I know what number we're talking about.
Sure.
Because if you remember, last year, part of the reason we were able to carry over $320,000 last year was we were looking at a greater than expected carryover. So the auditors are here now to give us some sense of what that's going to be. But there are a couple of major issues that are going on. I think I mentioned it, so I don't mind saying it again. But there is a movement in the community right now to establish a it's called artificial turf athletic complex at the high school, which would be a community-based thing. It's not just for Winthrop High School, with the track for the community and lights and whatever, and fields. So there's a fundraiser that's underway now to sort of make that happen, and to the extent that we can contribute some of that money to that, that'd be great. As I mentioned before, I read you a list earlier. For me personally, if timing were perfect, if we could apply whenever we want to, I would not apply for the revolving renovation funds if I thought we were going to have money in our own coffers to pay for all of that, but I wouldn't go borrow money. But it may turn out that it doesn't turn out that it's not going to, I will not know by the time we have to submit this application what that number is going to be. So I have to play a little bit of balls in the air with the game.
Any other questions in regards to the enrollment report? None from the community? No? Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve procedure IJ9DDR, Apple MacBook sign-up procedure for first reading.
So moved.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
is it IJNDR? or
Yep.
RJ?
IJNDDR, did I not say that?
That's not
Sorry about that, my glasses keep fogging up. Yeah, so IJNDDR.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any questions? I know that we, I think it was really like the fifth paragraph, we added in at the end, in cases of negligence or intentionality, replacement cost would be. And then the other discussion that we had at the policy committee meeting was, do we want to say anything about inappropriate use of the computer? Or warn parents that the filters are only available while the laptops are at school? Just so to make that.
Wasn't that, I think that's in the policy that goes home when they sign out.
It is, okay,
Usually it's like the computer internet use,
yeah,
policy would talk
Acceptable
about,
use policy.
yeah, we'll talk about, student misuse
yeah,
and,
okay.
I don't know if it talks about the filters, that probably does not, but it does.
Okay,
We did add, Susie, after we did get a chance to look at this much before the meeting, but in the fourth paragraph.
I just told them that,
Okay,
this right here, in
Yep.
case of negligence, yeah.
intentionality.
Yep.
Negligence, right.
I don't know that it would hurt to have that piece in two places. But I mean, specifically where this is a usage guideline, it might be useful to have it there, but, I don't know that it would make a major difference if you don't have it in library.
Well, I feel like at my school, they have to sign that they're going to agree to the computer internet use, and all of that information is in that document.
That's what this is, this is the one
Right.
that's on.
And it references this.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Yep.
I think that would be really useful. Okay. I mean, I guess one of the questions that I would have is, are we only letting parents know that, the filters are not the same at home as they are at school, or is there also some kind of, repercussion if a student goes to inappropriate sites or accesses inappropriate information? Should that be listed here, or should there be a separate,
Yeah, good question. What do you guys think?
I think it'd be a good question to take back to the policy committee.
Okay.
You were taking notes.
So this is, it may be different, so I apologize for this. This is Apple MacBook usage. Do we have an internet usage policy?
We have the acceptable use policy.
Okay, that's it. So that's the one that has all that language in
Correct.
it.
Yes.
In order to be able to use the internet at school, these are the rules that you will follow.
Is that just at school?
We probably should be reviewing that anyway.
Yeah.
As well.
But, yeah, so that would be good to know, is that at school only, because
So this
they're
is
taking it home and.
sort of an interesting question. It dawned on me as I was listening to you guys talk about this. This is Apple MacBook usage. We have,
You have Chromebooks, you have,
we have a lot of other machines other than the MacBooks. Maybe we need to, think about how to change.
technology use or computer use.
Yeah. Because, if they break their Chromebook, they say, that's not in here.
Yeah,
I
true.
have to pay for that. I don't think that's what we intended.
No, okay. I wrote that down too.
Thank you. And it would be true under the E, the next thing, but we can have other rules for that.
Okay. Anything else? Oh, this one, yeah. Any other thoughts or suggestions or concerns? All right.
So I'm just reminding you that this is first reading, so
Right.
you have time to make amendments.
Yeah, we'll talk about it at our next policy meeting, which will be the 20th. and then we can bring back any of the changes. Are you done? Okay, so are we ready to take a vote on the first reading? All those in favor? Okay, vote passes unanimously. I will entertain a motion to approve Exhibit IJN ED-E, Apple MacBook usage guidelines form for first reading.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded, other than changing the title of this to encompass all of our different types of computers and technology.
Right.
Is there anything else? Anybody?
Well, you know, it does make me, it sort of begs the question, do we need an acceptable use policy and this?
Yeah, I don't know.
Mm.
And I feel like this is very Mac generated, so I'm wondering if it obviously originally came when Apple
It did.
products came in, because obviously there's no mention of Chromebooks and by the database, it hasn't been looked at for a while, so I think maybe just, yeah, looking at a whole updated,
Yeah.
Okay.
maybe in conjunction with
So what I'd
that.
like to suggest is that you vote,
It's a first reading.
yeah, like Mike is saying, all technology policies should be revisited as they are fairly old. This was one specific MacBooks.
Yeah.
As Jim stated, is still valid for middle school, high school. I think I'd like to see us still consider, Mike is obviously on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
I'd like us to consider a policy that's more broad,
Okay.
for all of these. But if we come back, if we talk to Mike and, in the committee, we don't think that we think we need to have a MacBook use and then other technology, policy, then we can do that.
Okay.
One of the things that I'm guessing Mike would say is that there's a huge difference price-wise between, say, MacBooks and Chromebooks, or, isn't it? I think that.
So, I mean, potentially, we could, if we had one broader policy, we could just,
Put a table. in the
Right.
middle.
exactly, and add the other.
Yeah.
things. Okay.
Mike also added, I feel there are too many tech policies, ND,
And,
that's supposed to be in,
Yeah,
and we should consolidate.
yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Oh, and, that's what the end after is, I got it. You obviously
Okay,
meant
thank
it.
you, Mike.
A-
All right, so we're looking to consolidate some different policies. Okay. All
He's
right.
right, this was last revised in 2009.
Let's change some technology. All right, so are we still going to vote on the first reading for this?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so all those in favor? Vote passes unanimously. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve policy JL, school wellness for first reading.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded, discussion.
You can go through it if, you want, but Megan is also on the line.
I would love to defer to Megan.
Okay, Megan, you're on.
Hey folks, so this revision of this policy is part of a 3-year loop, and there's actually several people who are on the wellness committee that helped to develop this most recent draft that's being presented to you folks this evening. I believe Erin Lees is there, she's a member of our wellness committee. Timothy West is a member of our wellness committee, and Melissa Brewer is a member online. I actually think we might have another person from the public who's there. Is Nan there also, Nan Bell?
She's not here, no.
From the video. She's our outside consultant that she works with us. And then online we have Amber DeRosiers too, who's our parent and community representative. So it's a pretty dynamic group. Every 3 years, Erin is asked to re-up our policy and assess whether or not it aligns to state guidelines. And then Nan helps us look at how it aligns to our Let's Go paperwork that she kind of represents And so the most recent draft that you folks are looking at tonight does have a handful of edits. And the ones that are really highlighted for you there is a change in the food as celebrations piece on, I just memorized it.
Page 3. Yep, page 3.
Let me just get down to it. So part of the process as we revise this policy is we look at other surrounding areas. Wellness policies also make some comparisons. So some great discussion that we had in our wellness group was the idea of food safety. And Nurse Melissa has, some experience with that, and that also came up in some of the other wellness policies in other districts, along with nutrition concerns, and really trying to promote our nutritional program that is put forth through the schools too. So the biggest shift in this policy kind of reflects those two thoughts, where we're looking at any food or snacks or any sort of celebrations. We would ask teachers to reach out and use our food service program, our school nutrition program, to supply any of those additional foods. So we'd be asking that teachers and students do not bring any food to share. The big idea being to share. We want to make sure our kids are safe. They're having and being offered nutritional options. And so that's kind of the big pivot that we're putting forth here in this policy. There's a little caveat to that, as part of IEP goals might be centered around, cooking food and providing food. And so there is a highlighted piece on that same page saying that if it's part of an IEP goal, then we wouldn't have to worry about it. And we also made sure to add a piece that any fundraisers should be planned so that they don't compete with the school nutrition program. So really trying to, promote and support Erin and her staff as they, come up with some healthy options for our kids.
I have a question. When parents traditionally have sent in food, it is free. They're not charging the classroom. Do classrooms get charged for this? Or do teachers have to have a budget for this if they use the school nutrition program or any kind of celebration or reward that they're doing?
My guess would be that there is probably some sort of charge, but Erin, what do you think?
Well, there's a number of different variations on the theme. We're not going to provide free food for every kid's birthday, and nobody could. It would be impossible to keep up with. In the instance of something like next week, I'm getting Nuia snacks for 2 different schools, and the principals will come out of their budget, which they were already spending probably retail, and instead they'll be buying it from me wholesale, and we'll make sure that they're whole grain and approved snacks. Other things that we take into consideration, like we've had Dr. Seuss Day, where we did a free snack for every kid. It was, the colored goldfish, because, one fish, 2 fish, I can't say it. But that type of thing we did provide out of the school nutrition budget. So there's quite a few different situations. When we had the 5th grade, they don't call it graduation, what do they call it? Step up day. We did a barbecue for all of the kids up at the middle school, and it was just their school lunch that day. We made sure that it qualified, so since school lunch was free to everyone, the barbecue was free to everyone. It didn't cost anyone anything. So we're just trying to make sure that the celebrations stay within what the state requires us to do, and also not have any issues with severe food allergies, as in a parent bringing in something where a child that was allergic to that food item, went into anaphylactic shock. So we're trying to cover all the bases at once.
Is there any instance where any of this cost would be deferred to families?
I'm not really sure how. No, I don't really see how that would happen.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So does this mean, parents like to bring cupcakes in for birthday, so that will all go away?
Oh, wait, somebody may vote against it.
Well, I was gonna say, who tells them that they Can't
So-
bring them in.
Let me really, I don't remember who I was talking to about this today, but this policy is we are way behind. I can tell you 18 years ago when I was a superintendent in Rambler, Mexico, which is not the most progressive system in the world, we were going through the process of adopting this policy. That we are 18 years later, Winthrop is finally addressing this issue of food safety and all that type of stuff. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard for some people to say, you can't tell us we can't send stuff in for our kids and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to go through that process, and we've done it. We did it in RSU4 when I was there. All the schools that have done it, but we are way, way behind what other school systems have done with this, because we need to do it. We can no longer accept the liability. I don't know. We do have some sense of what our most fragile children have in terms of allergies and stuff like that. But we'd say to parents, you can bring anything that you want to send in with your kid for your kid. But the days of being able to send stuff in and just give it to the whole class, that's not realistic anymore. We can't accept that responsibility.
Well, we kind of went beyond that, do you want to go first, or?
No, well, the reason I had to bring it up is that I was the co-chair of the policy committee back in 2017, when my good colleague Meg Cook and I brought this issue to us. And actually, just about the entire policy committee said, wait, we can't do that. Parents, the kids, they want to bring things in, okay? Now, if you're telling me now I've got some great liability that I didn't know about in 2017, I would have said get a better insurance policy, because I don't think you should stop there.
I think it's not just the hours, we're like looking at, through all the COVID stuff we're talking about, protecting kids. It's the mayonnaise that's bad. It's food that's being made at home, they're not washing their hands. Some families are just not hygienic and they're not really clean home. And then here, feed my kids. And whole gosh, I think that's it. There's too many chances. I mean, they're not going to die, but they could have a
Call makeup tonight, that's the way.
There's
Well, it's the same reason everybody got away with it up until the
Yeah.
last 10 or 15 years, or maybe 20 years. But I would say you can look around, and we might be the only school system that doesn't have this policy in the immediate area.
So maybe we can just kind of change the culture and it's not food they bring in. I don't know, just an idea.
Because that's what we're is trying to get to a little trinket or a little
Yeah.
rewards or an activity.
Yeah,
Fun things to do instead of just food.
just food, yes.
So Megan White has more that she needs to say.
Okay, thank you.
Part of our wellness goal for this year was to work on our outreach and how we're going to communicate if the committee decides to pass something like this with our families and with our staff, since it is just a pivot, like Mr. Petrosky said. I think making sure that our families are aware of what alternatives to celebrations are. We already have some, drafts of documents that we're going to be looking at to make sure we can share some ideas. So we don't want to leave our parents who want to contribute to our classroom and our classroom culture out, but we want to make sure that our celebrations aren't centered around food. Thinking about physical activity, we can think of, other sorts of motivators for students, and the wellness committee would be happy to take that on to, make sure that everyone's involved and feels supported and has additional ideas on how to celebrate.
Thank you. Melissa?
As my fourth year here, so when I first started, of course, learning all the allergies, and it happened more here at the grade school when I was a district nurse. I remember in kindergarten, they'd have, of course, kindergarten, their parents would want to bring in cupcakes and things like that, and that happened throughout the district. But I remember it happened that day, and then the teacher would be like, oh no, can you just call this parent or this other parent to make sure that they can eat because they're gluten-free, or, they would have an alternative, and, and as we know, as we know, allergies are increasing. It's something I talk to all the teachers about every start of the year, about EpiPens and all of that, and like lactose is one of them, and it's a lot, because for me, it's added more, and the teachers, of course, too, because we do worry that it's something they can't eat, and then the liability of that, and yes, and it's just part of
Jolene?
I know for us at the grade school last year, COVID was a natural segue to not having food come in. And this year we've continued on that same path. So last year it was very difficult. Parents were very upset because it had been, something that had happened for however long. This year, there have been a couple of requests from teachers, are we still on the same path? And it's like, yes, because we have a policy that says that's the path we should be on. And one other piece outside of policy is the equities with kids. And that's a real big concern for me and for staff, I think. So I think it's just, it has made sense because COVID kind of helped us to move that direction. And now we're just continuing on that path.
Yeah, that makes total sense. The timing is good for it. Erin?
There's a financial component that I wanted to explain to Joe because of your question, that you cannot be in competition with the school lunch, or the state is within their rights to take away the money that they pay.
Well, what about the local vendors, okay, who benefit from this?
I'm sorry,
What about the local vendors who benefit from this?
benefit from what?
From making the cupcakes that the parent buys and brings to school?
I'm sorry, I don't have any answer for you for that. I don't think that it's gonna hurt the local vendors, but I know it can hurt our school system especially if we make it public. Friday we gave every kid in the high school a donut, and then that's something that is reported back to the state, then the state can say, you were in violation, and the money that we gave you for that meal is taken away from you. I've been in a school where the state came in and did that. It is something that we're not saying we just feel like doing this, we feel like taking away all the cupcakes from the kids. We need to follow the state's policy, and that policy is that you cannot have food in your school that's in competition with the school lunch or the school breakfast.
And I take that even further than that, just having this conversation this afternoon with the leadership from the association, that this is, for me personally, it wouldn't matter to me that the state is taking that position, but you're right, it sort of is the frosting on the cake. Oh, I'm sorry, totally bad. That's the icing on the cake, yes, yeah. But it's, this is just about, it's sort of funny, some people think we're overly cautious or whatever the case may be, but I guess as I've watched this happen, and I've been in schools where I've seen our kids, go into shock and whatever from things that they're eating that they're not supposed to. High school kids. I think it's, I get the sentimentality around celebrating a birthday, wanting to send in the hoodies and all that type of stuff, and my mom was the best cake maker there was, and so I'd love to be able to bring my mom's cake in and give it to people. But those are all touching, and I will miss that. That was sort of the statement that was made today when we were talking about. Think about this. We are no longer going to have the kids have snow days where they can run around and have fun, and we're not going to let them bring snacks in. It's like, God, I get it. But we're in a very litigious society. We're probably as health conscious more health conscious than we've ever been. And I just think we're not in a position where we can just say we're not going to pay attention to those types of things because we just want people to be able to do whatever we want. And that's why I said my fallback position has been very clearly this: send in whatever you want with your kid for your kid. Don't make any assumptions about the kid that your child is sitting next to is able to eat that without any negative response. I don't think we can make that assumption anymore.
Janet?
So, question. read that part.
Just during the school hours.
It's during the school hours.
Okay.
But it's from midnight to half.
Right, and
hour
they've done
before.
breakfasts before for teams before they go off to competitions during the day.
Sure.
So that would have to be done through the school.
Yeah, during the day.
Yeah,
That's typically on a Saturday
maybe.
though. Yeah.
So yes,
Okay, so that's the Saturday's fine?
that is, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry, Janet.
I have that question too.
Okay, okay.
Joe.
Let me just say that for all of you that I have offended, and I'm willing to try to get used as a lesson plan for you, this is just a communication technique to presuppose the arguments that are going to be brought up against us. And that's one reason I'm just repeating what we heard before, okay? And I think it's important because it's such a major change for some of our parents in the way they conduct their business and everything. And I can understand why last year was a great opportunity to take it and actually head in this direction. But I remember that discussion in 2017 very clearly. We were not going to get some of the statements that you now got, or will get passed, okay? Simply because conditions were different, the way doing things were different too. But,
I'm not saying people were really happy about it last year, Joe, because they weren't.
no,
But it allowed us to bring up the policy and to really say, you know what, this is at that time, we were concerned about COVID being transmitted on items too.
but all of us actually, I think as this school committee has really tried to be very, very clear with people and to let them at least listen to the discussions that we're having and everything, and to see us many times doing both the pro and the con intentionally, just to make sure that we've visited all of these areas. And I just think this part of the discussion was very good. It's kind of like giving the head of it.
You used to that.
I'm used to that.
Any other questions? Or anything, and then just take a vote on this structure. Yeah, all those in favor? Vote passes unanimously.
Thank you, Megan.
I will say, Megan, I would love to see like the newsletters or the one-pagers or whatever else you come up with. As a committee, I would love to see those, to see what's gonna go out to the families.
We'll be happy to share those once we get them together. Like I said, it's one of our wellness goals, and I think we have a pretty great group of folks, pretty dedicated folks that'll be working on that once we finalize.
Awesome, thank you. I want to thank Sue Fawcett for giving a little heads up to our Zoom participants. I forgot to about the public comments, so I think that you prepped them if they had any. Are there any?
Yes.
Okay.
So the comment is, I'm wondering if our district has submitted or is planning to submit an application to Kennebec County for the ARPA funds Kennebec County will receive.
I'm not aware of them. I'm meeting, I've mentioned a couple times, meeting with Town Manager Colbrook next Tuesday. I certainly can ask him about that. That has not come up in any of the conversations that I've had with Kennebec Valley Superintendent or the Commissioners Zoom. So I'll look into it.
What do those initials stand for?
The Kennebec Valley, the ARPA, I assume is American Rescue Plan. Yeah, he wrote that.
Okay,
American
thank you.
Rescue Plan.
Thank you.
The commissioners are considering it, although the budget committee, of which I think Sarah Fuller is still on the budget committee, is really taking a good view, but Ms. Alexander knows that a few years ago we had a little problem with getting information out of the commissioners. And this is one of the few issues that are items that they've actually, maybe it's because of the reporter, I think it's Jessica Lowell, has gone in and said, I want to take and get more information. It's kind of forced out information because I'm glad there's a lot of money there and it has to be spent in a very worthwhile way. and not to preface anything, but I've been very concerned about this money being used because it's a one-time money thing. It's not for me to be adding more employees necessarily, or higher salaries, or buying extra supplies. It's to do something that we can't normally do. And for us in Winthrop, for instance, the water that we have, the quality of our water, the amount of arsenic that's in this county and everything, this is, to me, almost found money to look at that, as well as the fact that we have environmental areas that need desperate cleaning up.
I'm just wondering, I'm not, community members written some additional things in here too, but I want to have a conversation with Jeff, and I may not wait till next Tuesday, because I know there are some things that he wants to talk to me about, what we've used our ARP funds for, that are specific to the school, and I guess I want to find out how much of this is actually stuff that the schools can tap into versus, I know that the community is, or the town, and I know the council has had some conversations about that, and you can certainly welcome to weigh in, Barbara, but that they have some thoughts, and Jeff has already emailed me and wants some information about that.
Thank you, Barb Alexander. I didn't come to talk about that issue, but I'm happy to just tell you that there's extremely preliminary discussions that are happening, and that there is no plan yet and no public outreach about options that has really yet occurred. And that is my main interest in making sure that we have a community-wide discussion. A lot of this federal money got handed out by formulas to counties, municipalities, and schools. And there are several years in which the opportunity exists to make investments and to have a plan approved to use those funds. And the amount of money that went to the counties in Maine is way beyond what counties typically do in Maine. And in many states, they are very powerful forms of government. So I have no idea what's going on at the county level, but I do know they have suggested a broader Kennebec County-wide series of discussions. And in Winthrop, we have over $600,000 under these funds. That is a very significant potential public purpose. And I think all I can say is the more coordination, the more public discussion, the more opportunity to try to have some consensus, I would like to help make happen, for sure.
Thank you. Any other things that you wanted to make a comment about? Or?
I did, and if it's appropriate, I've been trying to be very patient.
You can always raise your hand.
Well, I didn't understand the rules of the road for your meetings. I am incredibly impressed and want to say how much the community owes to the school board, the teachers, the staff, and everyone in dealing with what has been a very significant and stressful series of years of work. My main interest in coming tonight had nothing to do with my role on the council, but as a member of the community, and wanting to have the school board take as much of a leadership role as it possibly could to promote the use of vaccinations by these teachers and the staff. I view the obligation for vaccination in the same way the state has viewed this obligation for the healthcare community. And as I heard in the meeting today, it is likely that some sort of mandate may come down the road here. I understand that as a school board, you might not be able to do a mandate in our town without having more of a general statewide or national program to hang your hat on. But what I wanted to suggest was a lot of promotional work by the school board in the form of resolutions endorsing and calling for 100% vaccination with only the narrow medical exceptions that are allowed for the healthcare community throughout the Winthrop School District. I mean, making a statement about your expectations is certainly something that can be done. I saw the vaccination rates that are the only ones available to me as a member of the public, indicating that the high school vaccination rate was way lower than the other two schools and the town itself. And that was my immediate concern. Why is that? And what's going on with your leadership to try to promote an improvement in that? And it may not be the most recent information, and I would never say that you wouldn't have more recent. I'm just saying what I have and what the public has. The town's vaccination rate is 89%. This is a 20% improvement in the last 4 months. I know mandates work. We know that they do. It's why we've eradicated polio and measles, and why we don't have a lot of cemeteries full of young kids dying from historical diseases. So that's all I wanted to say, to urge you to try to be creative. Maybe have a contest among the schools, maybe do rewards and incentives. I mean, there's a variety of things to be done to help prepare the staff for the forthcoming mandate, which appears likely to happen.
Thank you.
So that was mine.
Thank you very much.
Can I just, not just sort of respond to that, but I think, in general, obviously I saw those numbers, and collectively, those numbers are different than and that's what I shared before. But it's hard to look at statistics and sort of figure out exactly what they mean. So for instance, I'm aware of that there are only 4 staff members at the high school that are not vaccinated. I'm not saying that as a fact, but I'm aware of that. But that's also our smallest population. So if you take, and I think there are far more non-vaccinated at the grade school, which is the biggest staff. So if you take that, it's just a matter of percentages. And so if you have a smaller number, actual an N size that's smaller, and you have a lower number or 4 or 5 people compared to that N size, then you're going to have look like a low percentage.
Yep.
So, and you might
Fair
have.
enough.
You might have.
You would know those things and I don't, and I'm
Exactly.
just bringing my suggestions for you taking a leadership role to promote the safety and the necessary impact of having as many vaccinations as possible.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
for your
Thank you.
input.
Thank you, Barbara.
And thank you all, because it's incredible what you're doing. I'm very impressed, to say the least.
Thanks. Any other public comments?
There's just 2. One is just a follow-up to say those applications are being accepted on a rolling basis, and they believe that the review is going to be happening soon, and a thank you for the thoughtful discussion this evening.
Thank you. Thanks for all the input for those who are doing in.
One thing I just wanted to make note, I think it was last week, I can't remember exactly the date, but we were informed that the law for the vaccines for K through 12, it used to be only 1 varicella, 1 chickenpox vaccine, and it's now 2. And so personally, I'm trucking away at looking at all 400 and however many students we have, because I used to just say check, yep, because they've had 1, or they've had history of chickenpox, so we have to have documentation of that. And then, so I just want the public to know that I'm doing that, and they'll probably get phone calls or emails or calls, because Jim and I, we've talked about this, and Jeannie and I, this was a law that came in effect September, and with all COVID and everything, so we're still trucking away. I still am looking at all 70 new students, trying to make sure we have all their records and all that. So I just want you to know that that is a brand new law, unless they're medically exempt or an IEP. So there's obviously some exemptions, but just so you're aware that we are working on that, but it's kind of on a lower, like we want to obviously protect the community, but I am up, typing away.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the public? Yes, Barb?
There was one little part of my comment that I forgot to provide you. In talking to epidemiologists, some of whom were involved in the creation and the early stage of the creation of the research for the current COVID vaccines, the way they said it to me and the way that I hope the members of the public here understand is we're in a race with the potential for mutation by this very virulent and transmissible virus and vaccination. And the only thing that will halt that mutation is vaccination as quickly as possible before we get the next round of mutation. And I think the kids' version of this vaccine is going to be approved within a month or 6 weeks, and that's going to be a big help to preventing the spread of our grade school and junior high students. So as fast as we can get these vaccines going, the more likely we are going to get rid of this thing that we're all very frustrated in.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, I will move on to the school committee comments. Anna?
Yeah, but I'll make them quick.
Yeah.
So I just want to really thank Joel Stilton for several things on this list. And there was a lot of other people as well. The homecoming parade, we haven't had one in a few years. It was awesome. The floats, the bonfire. Thank you to our police, fire, and ambulance who always step up sometimes within an hour or two to come out and parade our kids and support our community. It's so awesome to see. And when these videos get posted on Facebook, people are like, I can't believe this community does this. It really is a community thing, and it was awesome. So thank you to everyone that made that happen. I also heard that Joel made it so that the girls' soccer team scheduled a second bus so they could come into the pep rally and not be late for their game. So I just, again, appreciate him going above and beyond for the kids because the girls' soccer team was really bummed out that they were going to miss the pep rally. I'm sorry for stealing your thunder from the high school point of view. And Sharon Colton got her varsity letter. And I don't know how many of you saw the tribute to her. Her daughter wrote a letter in, and it was just really cool to see. And I heard she was quite shocked when she got it. I thought it was just an incredible sentiment to an incredible coach. Maddie Perkins today surpassed Emily Dooling Hamilton, 20-year career goal scoring record in field hockey. So congratulations to her. And varsity field hockey is now 12-0. So they've had an incredible season. And then lastly, and this should really be first, but it's hard to put all of that in order. Thank you to the staff that have lost time, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, covering for other staff that's out, staff that have had to step in and sub, photocopy, print plans, administrators who have stayed up late nights, figuring out what they're going to do the next day, or getting up super early to figure out what they're going to do that day. It's incredible to hear, and it's overwhelming. So I just want to say that I really appreciate all of what's going on in the schools, because I know that everyone is working hard. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Timothy?
2 Saturdays ago, we took 9 youth from the grade school for their first 5K. So
That's great.
Good that we're running with them twice a week and showing some emotional getting out there and just physical activity. We've got 2 teachers who do it with us from the Winthrop school system. So and we meet Thursdays from 4 to 5 and Saturday from 2 to whenever. Any kids or staff that want to come. And we're going to do some more races.
Awesome. Thank you.
Is there an age group they have to be within?
Kind of like we're saying, 5 is about as young as we want to go. Just because safety,
Sure.
we're in the woods and it just, but from 5, we don't care.
That's awesome. Thank you, Timothy. Kelly?
depth from where we expected it to be, that I can tell that that was a lot of work to be able to get that to happen. So thank you everybody who's involved in that. This has been an emotional meeting. I think anytime we're talking about the health and safety of our school community, you don't want to get it wrong. No matter what your personal stance is, you don't want to get it wrong. And I think that makes it really difficult. You know, what line are you going to walk on there? So thank you for all the thoughtful comments and discussion that we had.
That is certainly is. Joe?
Well, I want to send a shout out to Libby Arnold, who came to rescue yours truly as one who decided that he wanted his booster shot. And although it did require me to get down and hold my new grandson for a couple of hours, but I did go to the pharmacy in Gorham and got that shot. And that was great, but I know Amelia has worked with you and tried to get people their opportunities to get vaccinated and everything.
She's always willing.
Now I have a packet signed on that side and on the back side.
That was your booster.
Yeah, I had a booster shot, and so far I haven't fallen asleep yet. I mean, I stayed up for like 3 or 4 days, but you know. But the side effects were very minimal, let's put it that way. I would also just add a quick note to Janice's comment about the varsity field hockey team. I noticed that they made the state rankings that are being put out. It's always good to see a Class C school, you know, get its way into those types of things. And I think that's great. I did put Class C there with D in football, right?
Yeah.
The way it works. But you're right, talking with parents, great job that Joel's been doing, and support of the superintendent here to try to keep our athletic program going in spite of everything else that's going on around us and everything. So that's great. But I'm very pleased with tonight's discussion too. It's good that we talked. And I'm pleased that so many people attended remotely, so the word will get even further.
7. Oh, now there's going to be 4 people.
Like I said, last week was homecoming week. We had dress-up days, we had a lot of sports games, the parade, the bonfire, and the pep rally, and that was all really, really fun and amazing to be able to do that again this year. Next week, on Wednesday, freshmen are taking Maria's, and sophomores and juniors are taking PSATs, and at the same time, seniors are doing community service projects. And on Thursday next week, the first episode of season 5 of WPS 75 is coming out, so keep an eye out for that, because that is always really fun to do, and it would be really cool. And also, I want to say I'll have a little more prepared next week, next meeting, but to Caroline she's really involved in everything. She's a great student. She's a great, really like a leader of her grade. She's a senior class president, student council, all of those things. And she's super energetic. She's very peppy. She's always, she's willing to do anything. She always brings life to whatever room she's in. So I'm really excited to work with her. So.
Nice.
Thank you. Janice stole most of my
I'm
thunder.
sorry.
That's okay. I did want to add one thing, a couple things about the homecoming and the parade, and I want to thank the boosters. The boosters have done so much this year to support everything. They are everywhere. They're so organized. They do so much. They've added so much to all the sports I go to.
The road signs that they put out, and Chevy helped to pay for those, but it still was the boosters that guys just.
They were instrumental in all of that stuff. Also, all the parents who were involved with helping get the kids to do the floats and all that stuff. And then lastly, about the girls soccer team, they're paired up with Monmouth this year, and I think all but 2 of all the Monmouth girls came and our girls in their homecoming. And it was an amazing experience. My daughter plays on the team, and it was just so cool. And they were so excited to be part of it. And they're all like, we want to come to Winthrop, this is awesome.
Bring them on.
Yeah. And then last week about that, I was at the parade, and I actually had a community member come up and thank us as a school committee, even though we didn't really have anything to do with it. They were just so excited to be part of that community, and it was a great turnout, and I think it jazzed up the community a lot.
It's unfortunate football didn't get to play, but.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate. And there was one other thing I was going to say, but it's escaped me. So thank you to everybody on the Zoom and all your really thoughtful comments. Like I said, I can't remember what the other thing was. So without objection, I can declare this meeting adjourned at